Let me know when we're ready to start. All right, we are calling the meeting to order. It is 7:04 p.m. I need a motion to approve the agenda.
I can make a motion to Commissioner Brown-Blake making a motion to approve the agenda.
Can anyone second that motion?
Second.
All right, we have an agenda. Announcements from staff.
I would like to announce that our affordable housing manager, Iris Grace, has returned back to work.
Yay, welcome back, Iris. May the record show. Any brief announcements from commissioners? Announcements from council liaisons?
Should we take a moment to welcome and introduce the new commissioners?
Absolutely.
Why don't we do that? That would be an appropriate
A
commissioner announcement.
announcement.
We have new commissioners.
Absolutely. We have 4 new commissioners here today. I don't remember their last names, but we have Dylan. Maybe just quickly introduce yourselves.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dylan Horton. I'm glad to be joining you all for my first meeting this evening. I spent seemingly thousands of years, but just 6.5 years on the Police Accountability Commission. I'm glad to be serving in a new area with the city with y'all now.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Chris Marcu. I'm also new and joining here this evening. Likewise, just very honored to be here, to be part of this commission here, and to be serving Davis here and giving thoughtful input on this. So looking forward to this.
You're welcome.
My name is Patrick Curzon. Again, honored to be up here and to be able to help out with the different kind of things we're going to be talking about.
Welcome.
Hello, everybody. My name is Conrad. Pleasure to meet all my fellow commissioners. I look forward to working with you all, and thank you, staff, for preparing all the material tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other announcements? Oh, all right. No? All right. Now we will open for public comment. At this time, any member of the public may address the commission on matters listed on this agenda.
Public comments on matters not listed on the
On matters not listed on this agenda, excuse me. We have 3 minutes for public comment.
Hi. My name is Ning Wan. I'm a long-time resident of Davis. I moved here in 1992. And so this is my first time doing your meeting, and I was a historical resources management commission committee member for almost 6 years, just turned out. So I have a question about homeless. I'm a dissident of the Chinese Communist Party, and I believe, I have my own booth at the Davis Farmers Market, and I believe Xiaolongzhu is God, and it's Elon Musk, and it's President Trump, it's Michael Jackson. And so I have my personal, and I am against the Chinese Communist Party. A few weeks, last week, a group of Chinese Communist Party members came to my, I divorced. So I moved out of $1 million house and moved to Rancho Yolo. I have to rent the land, but I paid for the full price. And they came over and told me, there's one person is raiding. It's called the Red Maple Grannies. Red Maple branch, Red Maple is a Chinese Communist Party branch in Davis. And I know them. I'm from China. I was house sitting by the Chinese Communist Party. And 2 days ago, they sent me a eviction from Rancho Yolo. So my question is, how people become homeless? They threaten me, they want to, put me in homeless. I was IT manager for Institute of Transportation Studies at Davis. I have a very good pension, and but that threaten me, and I received a package evacuating me from my Rancho Yolo rental land home. So I I was wondering how, you know, your committee can help someone. And I do love my home. I spend a lot of money and energy to secure that home, and it's my retirement. And I'm a real woman, you know, I'm fighting for the humanity. And I want to let everybody know, Kamala Harris is my ex-husband's stepmother. It's a communist, you know, agent. It's a eunuch. It's a Chinese empire families, you know, like a eunuch. And my name is Ningman. I am the granddaughter of lost Chinese empire. And my grandpa is Li Yanwan. It's the lost empire Puyi, and also the first president of the Republic of China. I'm the legal owner of the fund called the Ningwan Soul Prop. I believe, you know, supports Davis operation. And the city manager, Jenny Tan, was my classmate from China. It's pretending to be Ningwan. I'm the real Ningwan. And they sign my name and issue, you know, checks in my name. I want to let everybody know my name is Ningwan, and I don't want to be homeless. And I hope, you know, City of Davis, it's United States, it's a free country. I don't have to be, you know, manipulated by those communists.
Okay.
Thank
Thank you.
you. And this is Shanghai too.
Hello, my name is Jeff Stolnick. I'm on the Davis Senior Citizens Commission and the Yolo County Commission on Aging and Adult Services. We had some handouts. Okay. The Senior Citizens Commission really needs to start liaising with other commissions, particularly the Social Services Commission. On our commission, we're senior citizens and the disabled. I'm both. I specialize in homeless senior citizens, and not just trying to get services for them, but to actually develop housing for them. On your agenda, under item 8B, you have the Social Services and Housing Department update. This is something that the Senior Citizens Commission should be included in doing. And Deanna, you already have the handout, I think. Yeah, that includes the new budget, Yolo County budget practices, which actually are pretty sad and will probably have some effect on Davis's services too. With what comes from Yolo County, things are going to be cut. Our commission actually approved that, but didn't have much choice. So I really think that our commission, and I have quite a bit of experience with the city of Davis and Yolo County. And our chairperson is also an attorney who has quite a bit of experience. She lives in Rancho Yolo, which is now becoming very unaffordable for people there. There are people losing their residences and becoming homeless.
Really? I didn't know how to Rancho.
Excuse me?
I didn't know how to Rancho.
Yeah, it's happening to you?
Oh, no. They're threatening me, but I have money. I
Okay.
can do.
Thank you for your comment. It was 3 minutes. Thank you so
All right.
much.
There are some handouts that she has.
Yes, we have the handout. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Let's try to keep it to 3 minutes. I don't want to be rude and cut anybody off.
Hi, my name is Kim Coons, and I'm here as an executive director of the California Center for Cooperative Development. And I also am a resident of Davis, raised my 4 children here, and know that we really need more affordable housing. I really welcome the opportunity for there to be a limited equity housing co-op as part of the Village Farms project or part of another development in Davis. I have, Dana, if you wouldn't mind, I do have the handouts too, just to provide some more information about the model. We have a great example of limited equity housing co-op here in Davis in Dos Pinos, and that cooperative, I have a friend that waited for 5 years to get into that project, and there's still a very long waiting list there, and it'd be nice to have that opportunity for other people. So there's opportunities that I explain in the handout, as well as some links that I emailed to you. And so I hope that you'll really consider this is an opportunity for people to get into home ownership at a low cost and have relatively low monthly payment as well.
Thank you so much.
Is there any other public comment not related to the agenda today? Okay. Then we're going to look at the consent calendar. Can we approve, a commissioner, we need a motion to approve the consent calendar with the minutes?
I move to approve the minutes from last meeting on June 19th.
I can second them.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Now we are going to move on to our next item on the agenda, which is action items. So we're going to talk about affordable housing, the review and approval of Village Farm Davis, affordable housing plan and project, and the individualized program.
Tonight we'll be receiving a presentation from Katie Yancey, our Economic Development Manager, Director. Excuse me.
Good evening, Commission. I'm going to take just a brief minute to explain why, one, you're getting a presentation from the Economic Development Director and not Dana or Iris. So I think that should help sort of maybe set the context for what you'll be considering this evening. And then two, just give a brief sort of rundown of my CV so it helps explain that I'm coming at this not just solely as someone who has expertise in economic development, but I have in my history and on my resume have managed new construction affordable housing projects. So I do have extensive background in the financing that goes into new construction affordable housing development projects. I have done various real estate transactions, so I just wanted to sort of provide some assurances that that's the case. Secondly, I'm here because this is a very large project, a complicated project that we're bringing for you tonight, and it requires the work of many departments. It's a very cross-disciplined approach, and as such, what we need to discuss has a myriad of disciplines that we're bringing into it as we're thinking about the totality of the project. In this particular case, what's in front of this commission tonight is the consideration of a project individualized program. Projects individualized programs are not always, well, they can be, living within the realm of the area that's specific to this commission. This commission, it concerns itself with, and particularly when it comes to affordable housing for low-income groups and below. PIPs are not required to focus entirely, although they do have to meet the minimum requirements in the code. They can talk about other housing objectives that typically fall in the realm of economic development. So given my expertise and the fact that Iris was out for 7 months, I went ahead and volunteered to step into this role to serve in this capacity both for Village Farms project as well as for Willow Grove if needed. So that is a little context as to why you're getting a presentation from the Economic Development Director this evening. But with me, I just would like to point out, is our Principal Planner, Dara Dugworth, and Terry Metzger, our Community Development Director. They're free to answer any of those multidisciplinary questions that may arise as the result of your discussion. So just wanted to set the stage. This may be a little bit out of your typical comfort zone and purview, and I apologize for the new commissioners. I will go slow, and that's not because I don't expect that you will be able to grasp the material. I expect that all of you read the staff report, but this is complicated and complex, and I want you to have time to write those clarifying questions that you may have to ask me that will occur after you've heard public comments. I want you to have time to sort of figure out, maybe I need to go back to slide 7 and answer the question related to that. So I just want to give you some time. So that's my little housekeeping intro. So thank you very much. We'll dive right into our presentation. It's 15 slides to give you kind of an idea of the content that you'll need to be sort of absorbing as we're discussing this. Okay, so first and foremost, the Village Farms proposed project. It's about a 500-acre project in North Davis. It includes 2 parks, a natural habitat area, fire station, agriculture and green belt buffers, roads. I know everyone thinks that's funny that we put that on there, but oftentimes the fact that we're adding a bunch of roads to the systems gets left out. We have a Sorrowboro site. We also have a site that's focusing on some neighborhood services. And for this commission, what you really need to understand is that there are both ownership and rental housing types. And that is really important to keep in your mind as we are talking about what are the requirements under the city's inclusionary housing ordinance that then get translated into a project individualized plan. So, and I want to just say that this is based on the description that we received from the developer in November 2024. We have been in active negotiations with the developer for quite some time, and there has been some minor refinements. So in the eventual the final version of the project might look slightly different than what you see in the staff report, but for the purposes of this commission's purview, we're not expecting anything to change. So I just wanted to throw that out there. If something does change, we will be returning back to this commission to reevaluate the PIP if it is under your purview and it is relevant to the particular findings and recommendations that we're seeking here this evening. So the developer has a lot of stuff to still do to get to before the project moves into construction. Getting this part of the development agreement is just one of those ones that we need to get finished here relatively soon because the developer has a very tight schedule in order to make it to their ballot that they're targeting for their measure JRD vote. The purpose of bringing this PIP for you this evening is because the developer wants to be vested through their development agreement and whatever decision is made related to how they're meeting their inclusionary housing requirements. Vested is a term of art that we use when we're going through these complicated entitlement processes. And really what it means is that from 15 years from now, the rules won't have changed. We're going to agree to something today, and for the lifetime of the development agreement, provided that we don't open that development agreement up for changes, it is what it is. And so that is really what we need to be considering as we're thinking about providing comment and making the findings and perhaps making the recommendations this evening, is that this is going into a larger document that's going to be around for a very long time, and there won't be another bite at the apple once that development agreement is approved by the City Council. So the proposed PIB for your consideration this evening describes how the project, that you saw on the previous slide, is satisfying its inclusionary housing requirements. That's a term that's defined in the staff report that's as prescribed by the municipal codes. This is really a regulatory process. What are the regulatory requirements under Chapter 18 of the municipal code, and how is the developer satisfying them? And we're here to discuss that process with you this evening. So first and foremost, there is a formula that we have to go through in Chapter 18, and that formula is based on what are the housing types, ownership and rental, that are going into the project. And because this project is not exclusively one type, we have to then go through the process of assessing what are the percentage requirements for each type. So both by ownership type and then by rental type. And then in the ownership section, we have 3 different types that we're looking at here. We're looking at lots that are larger than 5,000 square feet, that are a detached unit type, so that's like your standard single family home. We're looking at lots that are on less than 5,000 square feet, but again, detached, maybe a smaller footprint single family home. And then we're looking at attached single family residential. So those are your condos, townhouses. They're gonna share a lot line and the building line together, so they're gonna be a denser product type. And as you can see, generally speaking, the less dense your project is, the more affordable units you're required to provide based on that unit type, versus the more dense you are, and in some cases, the more market rate affordable you are, the fewer actual deed restricted low income and very low income units you're required to provide. So you can see here of the 1,400-ish units that they're providing that are ownership type, they have to provide 263.3 affordable deed restricted units that are for low income and very low income groups. We apply that same concept to the rental. They're proposing 82 rental units. That in the staff report is you'll see is referred to as like co-op or moderate income deed restricted. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But just for the purposes of the calculation, it's rental. Doesn't matter what the structure is, it's rental. And in this case, it's 15% of that, so we get to 12.3. In total, based on the requirements that are in the city's inclusionary housing chapters and ordinances, etc., they're required to provide 278.6 units. So that's their obligation, and everything that we talk about as it relates to their PIP comes back to how are they satisfying that obligation. So for projects that have more than 200 units, and I forgot one more thing, I want to go back and just clarify one thing. What you'll notice is that I don't apply a percentage to the 278 units itself. So there isn't like another multiplier that we add to affordable units. So that's how we get to 1,800 units in total. The 12.3 plus the 82 on this screen plus the 1440 on the other screen don't get you to 1,800 units. That was on the previous slide. That's because we're incorporating in that rental product that's all affordable. But we don't have a multiplier for that because it is 100% affordable at that point. So just an important note if you're looking at the math and going, I don't see us getting to 1,800 units. So when you have projects that have over 200 ownership units, which in this case they're proposing 1,400, that means that you can meet that obligation, that 278.6 unit obligation, any of these 4 ways. And then there's this 5th magic way that we're about to talk about, which is the PIP. So you can construct the units on site. You can do half of them as accessory dwelling units. You can pay half of them as an in-lieu fee, or you can do a land dedication. And the land dedication formula is talked about in the staff report. The land dedication formula is that 278.6 divided by 15, and what the municipal code actually says, 15 dwelling units to the acre. There has been some confusion that maybe that is reflective of the zoning. It's not, it's a formula that's there to describe the size of the asset that is being dedicated in lieu of constructing the units. It's just really important to keep that in mind, is that it's a formula to describe the size of the asset, not a formula that's meant to correlate to the actual zoning of the land that's being dedicated. So the developer has said, we would like to do this 5th option, which is a project individualized program, and they are incorporating the land dedication component and other projects, components, other programs, other things that they feel are contributing to overall housing objectives. And I said in my intro that PIP can consider other projects, programs, contributions that are not to those targeted income groups. That's in our municipal code. It doesn't specify that it has to be towards those targeted income groups. So a PIP, the requirements for our PIP basically are, 1, you can propose alternatives to the standard process, but you must generate the same amount of affordability equal to or greater than the amount that would be generated under the standard requirement. So there's no relief from the 278.6. You have to produce 278.6 worth of units in your contribution in your PIP. And again, they must be targeted, those 278.6 must be targeted at the very low and low income groups, which is the purview of this commission. In order for a project to take advantage of this fifth option, this PIP option, we first have to find, this commission has to find that the program is in fact meeting the necessary eligibility criteria for it. In the staff report attachment, there is staff's assessment of these categories. Is there a need for a government subsidy? Is the project have sustainability features and services? Are there needs for this type of project? Is it unique and innovative? And are the overall benefits and what are the overall benefits and drawbacks of the project? In this case, when we're discussing the project, we're not talking about the PIP. We are talking about that first slide of everything that is the totality of the project. So the assessment for PIP eligibility is not on, is the PIP itself innovative, sustainable, unique, have benefits. It's the overall project meeting those requirements. And I just want to, I have another note I wanted to add, and it's escaping here now, so let me check my notes. And one of the reasons why this criteria exists is that we are required to scrutinize PIPs above and beyond what would typically be included in one of those 4 requirements for how you're meeting your inclusionary housing requirements. So if you follow the standard formula for the land dedication, which in this case would result in about 18.573 acres worth of land being dedicated, if you pay the 50% in lieu fees, if you do the 50% ADUs, or you do construct the units, the thought is that you're meeting the standard requirements that are in the code, and so you do not need to scrutinize that. In this case, with the PIP, you have this finding. This finding requires this assessment. In addition, it requires that we reach out to several stakeholders in the community, and Director Bailey did that. She made sure that emails were sent out to all of our registered nonprofits that are involved in affordable housing, and I don't know if she'd like to comment on the number of emails that she had to send out, but it was substantial, let's say that, in order to do that outreach, because the purpose of a PIP is not just to sort of accept it on face value, but to really do the kind of assessment and analysis that's going to be happening in the staff report, and that's going to be happening in the discussion that this commission has after we're done with this presentation and you've received public comments. I just wanted to make that note. The last note I wanted to make about this finding is that the municipal code doesn't really tell us how to do this assessment. When it says need for government subsidy, it doesn't say how much of a need for the government subsidy. It doesn't say you should never need a government subsidy. It doesn't say that, it just tells us that we have to scrutinize and assess that. So if you look at that and go, this isn't really what I was expecting, just understand that there isn't direction in the municipal code for how we do that assessment, just that we're required to scrutinize and assess. So in addition to all of that, the commission is being asked to find that the PIP generates an equivalent amount of affordable housing. So again, equivalent amount of affordable housing, that's 278.6 units, half going to low income, half going to very low income households. That's what they're required to do, and this commission is required to make that finding. If this commission does not make both of those findings, that the project is eligible for a PIP, and that it does generate the equivalent amount of affordable housing that's required under the standard requirements, then this commission can direct the developer to go back and fulfill their obligation with the full land dedication of the 18.573 acres. As I said in the staff reports, the developer does reserve the right to appeal the commission's direction and decision on this topic, and can send it back to the city council for an actual ruling and determination, and then proceed with what the council's direction is on that topic. So my recommendation is as you're considering these findings and thinking about the feedback that you're providing, that you keep that in mind so that we can be as comprehensive in our reports to the Planning Commission and City Council as possible. So now to the meat of the discussion, which is what does the PIP include? 9 to 9.5 acres of land dedicated for that 278 unit affordable housing project. We would round up to 279, but that would be consistent with the zoning. The zoning that they are having for this parcel is 20 to 40 dwelling units to the acre. And this would roughly be equivalent to a 31 dwelling units to the acre project. In addition to the land dedication for the 278 unit project, they are offering the following additional contributions. They are saying that those 82-ish units that you saw that we listed as market rate rental, they want to go and beyond just saying above and beyond saying that it's just market rate rental, and they're saying we could do an ownership structure that's a co-op, or if that is infeasible, if it's impractical, if we're unable to deliver that, then we will deed restrict those rental units for moderate income households. That's one of the contributions that they're providing as part of the PIP. In addition, a $2 million cash contribution into the Housing Trust Fund that would be for the use of the construction of the 278 unit affordable housing project. And in the event that that cash is not needed, it could be used in the Housing Trust Fund for other eligible activities. And then they're also offering a project-specific down payment assistance contribution worth $4.9 million. Now, all of these contributions, when we think about them, we're trying to understand, are these creating equivalency of what we would otherwise get for the 18 acres worth of land? Is this a fair, equitable, reasonable package for this commission, the planning commission, the city council to consider and approve for this project? So that is the sum total of the issue that's in front of you today. The analysis that we're required to do is to look at these contributions. And as you can tell from the staff report, there is information that we simply do not have to make a solid recommendation on many of these alternative contributions. But here's what we know. The co-op ownership units, we don't know enough information to be able to say that they're specific to any income level. We don't know if they will be for moderate income households or above. The multifamily rental units will be specific to moderate income levels. The moderate income households are not a targeted income group in the inclusionary housing requirements. And remind you, PIPs don't require that be the case if you're providing enough resources to meet that 278.6. And while neither of these alternatives, the co-op or the moderate income deed restricted units, actually further these particular targeted groups that are in the inclusionary housing requirements, they may contribute to other housing policy and objectives, other housing needs. And this could be something that we could say, yes, that gets us to that equivalency of those 9 acres that aren't being dedicated. The cash contribution that we're receiving into the Housing Trust Fund, it's very possible that this is a direct contribution that could go towards the permanent financing that the affordable housing developer will need to build that 278 unit project. It would count as local contribution along with the land towards receiving either 4 or 9% tax credits, and that would increase the competitiveness of a nonprofit affordable housing developer go out and seeking funding for their gap financing to get this project. So it is significant in terms of how it's going to contribute to the overall competitiveness of the project as it seeks home funds, MHP funds, any other kinds of funds that are available in the affordable housing community. It is also possible that this cash is just offsetting any increased construction costs associated with having the project density not be at the minimum. And that is discussed in the staff report. We simply do not have enough information to know. Without a fit study, are we ending up with a 3-story building or 4-story building or 2-story building or a combination somewhere in there in between? And as we look at projects that have public contributions in them that are seeking to be as competitive as possible, things like number of accessibility units, extremely low units, how many, is it a senior project? These are all things that a nonprofit developer will take into consideration as they are thinking about their best financing strategy for their affordable housing project. And if they are stuck with a density that perhaps makes it a little bit difficult for them to find the right strategy because they have to build over 30 dwelling units per acre, then this could be just an offset. We have none of that information right now, and I'm sure if you asked any of us up here, we might have various different opinions about where we think things might go. We think a larger cash contribution might be warranted, and it might assist us in concluding that the cash payment is actually just a straight-up contribution to the constructability of the project and not an offset. But the developer at this point feels pretty comfortable with the $2 million contribution. We feel comfortable enough to bring it forward to your consideration, but the larger context of the development agreement still needs to be negotiated, discussed, and brought forward to other bodies, and so it is possible that more money may be the result of those ongoing bigger discussions. The project-specific down payment assistance is the largest contribution, the largest alternative contribution that this developer is providing. And while it doesn't appear to provide direct assistance to any of the income levels that we've talked about previously, moderate, low income, very low income, it does appear to provide some assistance to the above moderate income level. This is not atypical, but it is not common. We can find examples of first-time homebuyer programs, particularly in the Bay Area, where this is the level that they have their income assistance go all the way up towards. As I mentioned in my staff report, the income limit for California's first-time homebuyer assistance program does go up this high. So while not common, it can be found. The targeted income levels will eventually benefit based on the structure that the developer is proposing, because they are not proposing that this be a silent second mortgage. So in our traditional down payment assistance programs that are for income groups that are at the low and very low level, oftentimes the city will hold a substantial silent second, which means the house is at $680,000, it's being sold at $680,000. The city comes in and buys that mortgage down by several hundred thousands of dollars and holds that note, and then allows the income qualified household to go and get a mortgage for that remainder, but we never seek repayment on that silent second mortgage. That is not what this developer is proposing, as much as we can tell so far based on the information that we have today. They are in fact proposing that this second mortgage, this down payment assistance of $70,000, is in fact repaid over a 15-year period by the homeowner, and that those repayments come back into the Housing Trust Fund. And then the Housing Trust Fund, once it receives those payments, can then recycle that money for those targeted income groups that are associated with the Housing Trust Fund. What we don't know is if this will work in the real world. We don't know what the cash value is of these repayments that come in. We don't know what the administrative costs are of administering a program like this. And we don't know if it's receiving cash contributions 20 years in the future from now, what the cash value will be of that money that's coming in. But we do know that this may assist in other housing policy objectives and needs that are beyond what's normally under the purview of this commission, and therefore could contribute to the relative equivalency of the 9 acres not being dedicated. So our conclusion is this: only one of 3 proposed additional contributions in the PIP directly support the targeted income groups that are in the inclusionary housing ordinance requirements. However, again, PIP is not required to do that. They are only required to demonstrate that whatever they're submitting can support the 278.6 units, and as I said, the zoning does support that. The most significant contribution can indirectly support future projects for this income group as it is currently written. If we begin to start talking about it being a silent second, and if we start talking about, instead of it being a $70,000 down payment assistance, and instead it's a $200,000 down payment assistance, because we're trying to get to lower income groups, that money may never come back in the Housing Trust Fund, and that equity will remain with the unit. And I do not believe, and I'll let the developer speak to this, that is their intention. I do not believe that that's why they're proposing the down payment assistance program. So I hope when I invite them to come up and share a few words after I've done my presentation, that they can speak to sort of why they have chosen this approach for their down payment assistance program. And while the actual value of that support may lessen over time, as the repayments may take decades, we just don't know what we can do with those funds as that happens. And we do not know if this is a bondable revenue stream. We don't know if those notes would be something that we could go and get a line of credit against. We haven't done that research. We don't know. There are too many variables at this point to be able to sort of fully articulate how this asset can be fully leveraged by the city and leveraged in a way that would support those targeted income groups. So with all of that, thank you for your patience as I presented all of that to you. We are recommending the following items to this commission. One, that you find that the development proposal in its totality does meet the necessary requirements to be eligible for a PIP. 2, that you find that the PIP does generate the same amount of affordability equal to the amount that would be required under the normal standard, because the 9.5 acres or 9 acres can support 278.6 units. We do recommend approval of the PIP substantially in the form as written to the Planning Commission and the City Council for inclusion in the DA, because honestly, we're not sure that we have much more information to be able to provide, because there are so many unknowable variables at this point. So we've done our best to give you the pros and cons of what we can see and ask you to make a value judgment, like we've made a value judgment in making these recommendations in this staff report. And lastly, since we just do not know how the Planning Commission and the City Council are going to respond to this content, we really welcome any feedback that you have to address the matters that were raised in the staff report in this presentation, so we do have a full understanding of what your hopes and expectations for this project or modifications to this PIP may be, so that they're in the record and we can take them forward in our continuing discussions with the developer and the planning commission and the city council. I thank you so much for your time and attention as you were listening to me talk about this. Thank you for reading a very long staff report. I'm going to conclude my presentation here. I'll turn over to Dana, and let Dana invite the developer up if it's appropriate this time, or to solicit public comment. But that concludes my presentation now. Thank you.
Would you like to hear from the developer first in these public comments, or would you prefer to?
I think we can hear from the developer first.
So I'd like the developer to come forward.
Hi, this is I do not assemble.
Good evening, commissioners, and thank you. I echo Katie's words about the staff report and the complication. And to that end, so I'm Rochelle Swanson. I'm the lead project consultant for the project. And I have with me Sandy Whitcomb from the multi-generational families, 7 of which are all local to Davis, as well as legal counsel Ethan Walsh, who is an expert in affordability and ordinances for municipal jurisdictions, as well as specific projects. So Sandy, you want to go ahead and come on up? So Sandy's going to get to what Katie talked about is some of the intent behind the project, the overview and the overall concept. And we'll be able to answer some of those deeper questions. We're going to stay here through all the Q&A. I'll talk a little bit about the outreach and what the reflection of the community needs were given, as we've heard over the last few years. And then Ethan's going to really talk a little more about how this individualized program fits within the ordinance, fits within the goals, and is able to achieve that equivalency that you guys are looking for to be able to make that finding. And with that, I'm going to let Cindy go into her overview.
Hi, everyone. Welcome, new commissioners, and thank you so much for your time and dedication to affordable housing. As Michelle said, I'm Sandy, and I'm a member of one of the families behind this, and I'm the daughter of John Whitcomb, who's sort of the creative brainchild or brain senior at this point of the kind of the overall project, and he's passed the torch down to our generation to bring this forward once again. It was in the 1985 general plan, this land, and we came to the voters over 20 years ago, and so hopefully we can make something happen this time. We've been working on the affordable housing plan for a few years now, and I just want to talk to you a little bit about kind of the vision and the holistic approach to the entire housing plan. First, the newest iteration, I am really excited about. The community feedback has been absolutely enthusiastic for this. And basically, about 24% of the total units are going to have some element of affordability assistance from the developer. So there has never been anything close to this comprehensive approach offered in Davis. And that's before we get to the majority of the additional units, which are targeted to the missing middle, but we won't get into that as it's not really under your purview. I just want to talk about a little before I get to the units, and there will be a few minor clarifications, kind of splitting hairs type things, but just to make sure everything's presented completely factually. But I just want to talk about what this project will bring to the low and very low income families that will be living in this community. First, the location. It's clearly the best available location in town for new housing. It provides the most walkable and bikeable options for residents anywhere. It's walkable to CVS, retail such as Subway, Little Caesars, and Supercuts, and walking distance to Nugget or a quick bus or bike ride to Safe Mart. It's a very central location to our elementary schools, junior highs, and the high school. Our land dedication for a brand new pre-K will be maybe 1 or 2 minute walk down the street. And of course, no other location offers more convenient options for transit, and it's a quick walk or bike ride downtown and to the train station. In addition, the affordable housing site is adjacent to a vast 20-acre park, community park called Heritage Oak, with playfields, trails, and many gathering spots. And it's connected to miles of walking trails and is just steps away from 50 acres that we are donating to Habitat. All of this adds enormous value to the residents and really improves quality of life, which I think is just as important as, or almost as important as the affordability. So now let's talk about the mix of units that Katie described. As you know, Village Farms offers 280 low and very low income family rental units. This is a substantial increase to the current inventory in town. It represents more than 30% increase to the current affordable housing rental inventory for families. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe our project will likely address a significant portion of the wait list, or possibly the entire current wait list. And it turns out that 280 is an optimal number for affordable developers to build. It will require two distinct projects because affordable developers look for a Goldilocks unit range per development in order to achieve grant funding. And 150 is about the max. That's why a little bit of cushion with the 140 for each development is about right. Also, we have consulted with developers and done density studies for this multifamily parcel. We are proposing more than sufficient land to include in the housing and to include the housing community center and high quality amenities. And the density study showed both 3-story and 2-story. And now we'll talk about the additional elements that we are offering in this plan. We're proposing options for families to step up from the big A rentals into ownership, creating a broad mix of rental and ownership opportunities in order to fill in gaps at the lower end of the housing continuum. These additional deed-restricted units include, as you heard, the 80-unit housing cooperative. These models are proven to keep housing costs down and provide affordable ownership opportunities. So now let's get to the $4.9 million down payment assistance that we are donating. We've been talking about this to the community for years. It's very close to our hearts. It goes along with one of the main themes of the project, which is to bring in young families to help save our schools and really concentrate on the missing middle. I disagree that moderate income people will not take advantage of this. But first, what I'll do is tell you, kind of make some clarifications about the program. Right now we are looking at 70 starter homes within the development, specific starter homes, that each will come with a $70,000 down payment assistance. It will be an interest-free second mortgage, and that second mortgage they will not have to make payments on that until they sell the house. It can be in 2 years, well, minimum of 2 years, and it could be 20 years. And when they do sell the house, they have to pay back that $70,000, but with a percent of appreciation equal to the percent of appreciation for the whole house. So as the housing market grows, this $4.9 million will also grow. And where the 15 years comes in is for the first 15 years, we have requested that the repaid down payments go toward additional down payments. These are all specifically for first-time home buyers. So we have asked that for the first 15 years, those funds would kind of regenerate towards more down payments, creating more homeownership opportunities for young families and first-time home buyers. So that's the concept. We're open to all of your feedback. Anything, we're we're still flexible in this plan, but I will say that after years of making modifications, we are getting such incredible feedback from the community. People are extremely excited about a co-op, which will also require some investment on our part in the end. And yeah, so I think that's about it. Look forward to answering any questions and hearing what you have to say. I'll turn it back over to Rochelle.
Thank you. So I wanted to give you a little bit of feedback and maybe anticipate some questions on how that was arrived with for the outreach. There was many membership staff we worked on over the years on this. Kitty has raised been multidisciplinary and really finding that way to be innovative and yet really land in a place that's viable and can actually be achievable and be built. So there's a lot of pieces that are moving on that. From the inception of the project, the goal has been to support diverse opportunities for housing to address the gaps in the Davis housing supply. And that's been a pretty consistent feedback, with the real focus from the beginning being a ladder of housing. So everything from very low income, being able to go to the low, co-op-like housing, getting to affordable by design, which is the smaller pieces. And there's a number of rungs on that ladder, and then eventually also appealing to the more traditional single-family homes of the larger type. So really a microcosm of what already exists in Davis. I think I want to make sure to also kind of point out, so the basis of where this is starting is this multi-generational family. There's 7 of them. They've actually been building in Davis for over 60 years, including many of our market rate and affordable units, as well as single family homes, custom homes, and large communities. And so this is something that they have a wealth of information drawn to actually start. We added from that is in about 2021, we started doing targeted outreach to existing electeds, former electeds, commissioners, different subject matter experts, a number of nonprofit developers, and those, actually some of them that have served on this commission in the past and have moved on to even do their own companies. We also did a lot of targeted meeting with subject matter experts, so it's also on the financing side from the banks. How do you do things like the down payment assistance? What's really the need out there? We've met with a number of realtor groups. So what they're seeing is what's out there, what are people focusing on? And one thing I will say that's been very clear across the board is this frustration about this missing middle, this frustration of we don't qualify for capital affordable, we don't make enough for a down payment assistance program, we're really stuck in that middle. And so that's really where it just kept coming back to this need for the down payment and really finding that spot so people can grow up the ladder. So in addition to all these meetings we've been having since 2021, including just open house community outreach at the different elementary schools and all the different neighborhoods, really focusing on this piece. What does the community need? In addition to those kinds of outreach, we also did a poll. And so I'll just really quickly want to run through this because I want to be able to have Ethan come up and talk. Is that with the far and away was the biggest one, which is no surprise to any of you, is cost and the availability of housing. And those two, even if you can afford it, it doesn't exist here. And so that's why there's a diversity on the continuum, and though your purview is really limited to what's within the inclusionary housing ordinance, this by doing the individual plan is kind of opening up and seeing how do we really augment that so we're not just focusing on when somebody gets into housing, how do we help them move up and stay in Davis. Over almost 69% specifically cited as the most very important issue was this cost and availability, and that new housing in the continuum was important. So just to restate, the individualized plan is looking at 15% deed restriction, which is required. We're hitting that 280, 5% of the co-op housing, and then another 70 homes that fall within the down payment assistance. But I wanted to get to the really meat of this and how to introduce Ethan. As I said earlier, he really is our subject matter expert, both on the housing ordinance and focusing on the individual plan. So thank you again, and like I said, we'll remain for questions as needed.
Excuse me, I just feel that it's warranted. So Ethan is an attorney, and he was the former city attorney. It's really important to provide context to this commission, and our city attorney is not here. So if Ethan says something that maybe is his own legal opinion, we do not have legal counsel here to provide her own legal opinion from reflecting the city or to refute anything. So please, I'm sure Ethan that won't be the case, but it warrants having it on the record that I gave that context to whatever it is you're about to say. So thank you for letting me do that.
And it is important to remember that you do have your own legal counsel. I am an attorney, but I'm an attorney for the developer in this instance. And thank you. My name's Ethan Walsh. I'm an attorney with Bass, Betts & Krieger in Sacramento. I actually primarily work with cities on affordable housing issues. I work with cities across the state on affordable housing issues. And I was, previously, I worked for close to 20 years with the city of Davis on redevelopment of affordable housing issues. So I do have a lot of familiarity with this ordinance, and I've worked on it and with it for many years. So I just wanted to cover, I know it's a lot to go through, and there's a lot of information here to try and digest and think through. And so I wanted to kind of get back to the issue that's before the commission tonight. And really the fundamental part of this is the affordability provision of it. And the question that Katie mentioned in her slide is whether or not this contribution will generate an amount of affordability that's equal to that's equal to or greater than the amount that would be generated under the standard ordinance requirements. So really what we're looking at is the requirement for this project is around 280 units. And so that's the requirement that we're expected to meet with the affordable housing ordinance. And one of the options that we have to meet that is through land dedication. And while the ordinance does have the 15 units per acre metric that they use to determine what the land dedication size should be, fundamentally the question is how many units can you get on this? And so we're assuming with our land dedication site a density of about 30 units to the acre. And part of the reason for that is that is around the density that City of Davis has seen in most of the other cities I work for, see for affordable housing in the community. So for example, the Adelante project next to the post office on 5th Street, that's a 37 unit project. It's built on a site that's just about 1 acre. Creekside development, also on 5th Street, it's at 2990. It's just a little bit closer to downtown from Explore It on the other side of the street. That site it's a 90 unit project on 2.27 acres. It's about 40 units to an acre. In Bartlett Commons, the affordable housing project in the cannery is it's a 61 unit project on 1.95 acres. So that's just over 30 units an acre for that project. So we thought that this 30 units to the acre metric for our affordable housing site is appropriate, and it can meet the requirements for land dedication. So that right there, in our view, meets the requirement that will generate an amount of affordability that's equal to or greater than the amount that would be generated through the standard ordinance requirements. And on top of that, we're providing the $2 million contribution towards the development of that project. And that's really important in this instance because historically the city would get land dedication sites for larger projects, Wild Horse, Mace Ranch, some of the much older projects. They would get those land dedication sites, but then back when they got those, the city had a redevelopment agency. And the redevelopment agency, one of the things they did is they generated a lot of money for affordable housing. And so the city had this extra tranche of money that they would use to kind of supplement those projects. And then they could use that and then layer other financing on top and see the project actually be realized. So getting additional money on top of the acreage, we think is a benefit to this project because it helps to fill that gap. And Katie mentioned that in her report. So we think that's a real benefit that's preferable in a lot of ways to just getting additional acreage with no additional money to support the project. Then on top of that, we also have the limited equity cooperative. And granted, that's not capital A affordable under the ordinance necessarily. We didn't want to commit to this at this point because we're not exactly certain where we're going to end up on the project. But it is a means, as one of the speakers mentioned in public comment, it's a mechanism that you can use to get more naturally occurring affordable housing and meeting that spectrum of needs that the city needs to meet throughout the community.
You're about close to the 5 minutes.
Okay, I appreciate that. And so I just have one more. And then lastly is the down payment assistance program. And Sandy mentioned, what the intent of that project is. And so I just want to emphasize, the $4.9 million that would eventually come back to the city through repayment, those loans will eventually be paid back. Yes, we can't predict exactly when they'll be paid back. That is additional principal bill that you would get, and then real estate, as we all know painfully well, appreciates over time, and as it appreciates, you get an increasing share of that. So that could end up being a very substantial amount of money over time. So we have the view that between the actual land dedication, which meets the requirements for affordability on its own, plus the $2 million, plus limited equity cooperative, plus the down payment assistance, definitely gives the commission the grounds to find that the contribution will generate affordability that's equal or greater than the amount that will be generated. Thank you for your time. I apologize for not helping.
Okay. We will now open it up for public comment. Dana, can you confirm if we're going to give 2 minutes or 3 minutes?
At this point, we're going to do 2 minutes. 2 minutes for comments, just to make sure that we have enough time for the remainder of the meeting.
Okay, so at this point, any member of the public that has a public comment related to what we just discussed, please come forward and please keep your comments to 2 minutes so I don't have to interrupt you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, again, my name is Ning Wan. I'm the legal owner of Ning Wan Soap. So I do have a question about this. I know developer in David is not easy, and I've never seen this on the board since when the farmer land rezoning to developers. How this happened? I want to know because I didn't see on the board to. Approved by the public. Secondly, I divorced, so I was looking for affordable housing. I'm retired from UC Davis Institute of Transportation Studies for after 16 years as IT manager. So I have a good amount of retirement, but I tried to buy an affordable house in South Davis, and I come to city, and I found out the vacancy that site is very high, and there were like 3 or 4 houses nobody, really can afford to buy, and especially when all these like restriction added to the city affordable house. For me, I feel the price is lower, but the restriction is too much, and it doesn't worth me to buy the affordable house anymore. So I have a question about this development, and especially how this farmland the rezoning to a city property. I believe a little bit about me. After I retired from UC Davis, I became a realtor. I worked for Coldwell Banker and what's that? But anyway, and I kind of my license expired. Remax Gold, Davis. And so I have a question about this project. I will do more research, and I don't feel I distance support this project. And my name is Ning Wan, the owner of Ning Wan Soap.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, over here. It might be helpful to remind folks, just so that the public record is clear, so the commissioners can hear folks, that they face the microphone the whole time that they're speaking, just to make sure that we can hear them the whole time.
Okay. He said it. Thank you.
Hi, Commissioners. My name is Zachariah. I'm a new community member. Pleasure to meet you. Hope to see you bumping around in the city. I wanted to urge the Commission a little bit against what the developer was recommending here. I actually don't think this meets the equivalency. I think if you squint in the land dedication with the possibility in the future, you can make the argument. But the goal of the inclusionary housing ordinance is actually the production of affordable homes. That's kind of the core and the charge of what you guys are interested in here at the affordability, deeper affordability levels. This proposal cuts the required land litigation in half, offers the modest contributions, I think they're modest, $2 million to the trust fund relative to what the development would cost for a project like that, and replaces the deeper commitments of affordability with a down payment assistance program that I don't think does enough. I don't come from a lot of money like a lot of folks in the city, and I'd love the opportunity to buy a home myself here. And to be clear, I support down payment assistance programs when they're adequately structured, and there's oversight, and there's investment, and there's administration. But tying it to a single development and treating it as a substitute for inclusionary housing seems misguided to me. This isn't really inclusionary housing in my view. It's a policy concession that delays responsibility and shifts the burden onto future councils and future budgets for how to develop what are the really affordable units that the city actually needs. If on-site inclusionary development is really off the table on this project, then this proposal, I think, must at minimum include substantially increased contribution to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund to meet that equivalency requirement under this ordinance, alongside that land dedication of 9 acres to ensure the units are actually built.
You're at time, sir.
Thank you very much. I look forward to meeting you.
I'm David McLaughlin. My first comment is, why is the PEP proposal even being considered when it's in conflict with our city ordinances? The proposal... I'll start over then. My first comment is, why is this PEP proposal even being considered when it conflicts with our city municipal code? This project is required to provide 18.6 acres of land to be dedicated for affordable housing, so that is what we need to provide. There is no excuse why the city should allow this developer this special privilege to only provide 9.5 acres rather than the 18.6 acres required. This would benefit the developer and seriously compromise our affordable housing. This PEP needs to be denied, or it will set the stage for other developers to ask for the same. I urge the Commission to reject this PEP proposal and to have the developer follow the Affordable Housing Ordinance. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Ray. I've been a longtime Davis resident. I'm here to voice my opinion to disapproval for this PIP proposed by Village Farms. We've been dancing around this project for so long, and the levels, the city has already, the voters of the city have already turned it down. But reducing the amount of land that is required from 18 acres down to 9, I think, is a real signal that corners are going to be cut left, right, and center. I feel it's really unacceptable in terms of offering quality affordable housing. Low-income housing, advocates have been asking and begging for quality low-income housing, not crammed together rat cages. And so I think that there are so much lack of certainty, and there are so many details that are unknown, that this proposal is really rather dodgy. The change from 18 acres to 9 acres does not meet the city's obligations and standards for affordable housing. This developer is essentially asking to break the rules, but fudge them a little bit. And if you allow this, then all future developers will seek to break the rules and just kind of make things really super complicated and muddy and see what they can get away with. Then there's this proposal that will donate $2 million, and then we'll let it go. I think that that's a real cheap deal for the developer. It's my understanding that the city's going to have to manage this sort of slush fund manage all of this. And that means that the city taxpayers, again, have to hire somebody at our cost, you know, with retirement and all duties.
You're at time, man.
Pardon?
You're at time.
I'm sorry. Anyway, I'm hoping that you're not going to do this and kind of give this more thought. This is not a good proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. It just, I think you guys can see when it gets read, time is up. Thank you so much.
My name is Rena Nair. Please deny the Village Farms PIP proposal. It seems to me that it does conflict with the city municipal code by cutting the land for affordable housing in about half, which will make it difficult to actually come up and complete quality affordable housing, as other people have said. The down payment proposal that the city code says is meant for low and moderate income households, but their proposal apparently could be taken advantage of by wealthier buyers who don't really need it. The promises of the plan are also too vague, as we repeatedly hear things will be done if feasible, which really means we don't know what we'll actually get. It is also very concerning how much is not known, while there is pressure to develop quickly to meet the developer's timeline instead of our own. It seems to me that given the years of planning, that there should be more concrete information with actual details that we can go on. We keep hearing about people who grew up here or work here and can't afford to live here. There seems to be a need for more affordable housing at various levels, not for expensive housing. So we should deny a plan like this. It is vague in promises and probably undermines the very type of housing we need. Please deny the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Susan Rainier. I'm an architect and a sustainability expert. I think I'm getting alarmed at the city itself for what they're allowing to have happen here, because the same developer gamed the EIR and did not provide the smaller alternative. And I've never seen that happen before. And then now to have this big project and try to break the regulations that we have for the housing, have a heart. We have to start doing nice housing for people. It's being called out for by a great deal of the population. And I'd also like to point out the risk to the city that I perceive. The project, huge as it is building near a landfill with known PSAS on a floodplain where the state has already said there will not be insurance for that if you knowingly do it. Near high power lines that are on pole line, and this kind of gaming of the affordable housing. I just urge you to vote against this because there's been too much bending over to a developer instead of holding Davis as the highly sustainable city that it is and has such beautiful neighborhoods and things like that and bike trails. And continue that instead of just trying to max out the housing on village, not farms.
Good evening, Commissioners. By way of brief background, my name is Morby Kumagai. I have lived in Davis since 1969. My dad left the University of Utah School of Medicine to join he was one of the original faculty members here at UC Davis when the school opened. I actually started junior high here across the street at Emerson. My wife's family, Debbie Mayhew, her dad left the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor and became the chair of the sociology department here at UC Davis. When we were both in the first week of seventh grade, is how both of us met. And we literally grew up together. The reason why I'm speaking very strongly in favor of this is we are having our class reunion for the class of 75. I'm a very proud product of the Davis schools, as my wife was. And we're also celebrating our 50th anniversary. Every time we have one of these reunions, my classmates always say, how is it that a couple of you can afford to live in Davis? And we'd love to live in Davis. We'd love to have the same experience for our children and our grandchildren that we did growing up. And we just can't seem to do it. One of the reasons why I've been working with John Whitcomb and the project for the last, I think, at least 15 years, going on longer, is because I see the need for my classmates to have affordable housing here in town. And I think this is a program that would actually do that. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Barbara Clutter. I'm a Davis resident. I've been working with Interfaith Housing Justice Davis on affordable housing for a number of years. And while the Village Farms plan has many very good features, I've kind of learned to be suspicious of developers. I'm wondering why they're offering more affordable housing than actually required. What's the catch? We don't know that the smaller amount of land dedicated will actually be able to be developed by an affordable housing developer. We've been told that that's the case, and I hope it's true, but it'd be nice if we had more proof of that. Another problem, as a novice in all of this, I see the possible problem is that all of what we have seen presented tonight isn't really written in stone. It's not in, hasn't been put into the developer's agreement, which I understand is what really holds them to do what they agreed to do. So those are my questions. Thank you.
Hello again. Davis does need affordable housing, especially for families, children going to school, supporting our community. Now I see every day I deal with homeless senior citizens. Most of them are on Social Security, and I'd like to see some units set aside for very low income senior citizens, and basically, if they're on Social Security, the rent or monthly fee should be 1/3 of their income. And I would like to see that added, some units added to this project that are that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Eileen Sammons, and I sent a letter to folks. I hope you all got it, and I have a hard copy tonight because I got some bounce backs. I'm a former planning commissioner for the city. I was also on the general plan update and served in the Housing Element Steering Committee. So, and I've been following land use issues in this project and its predecessor. And after reading this staff report, I was shocked to see what it's proposing, because it certainly is not equivalent to the standard affordable housing requirements that the city has, especially in its ordinance. And it would be a travesty if this were allowed to go forward for many reasons. I may not be able to get all through all of them, but just I gave some history about how this developer, is tenant properties. They own 14 apartment complexes, so they've made their fortune here. But they also built North Star, which is primarily high-end housing. So his resistance to building affordable housing is not hard to understand, but he should not be allowed to do this, because this will set a precedent. If this is allowed to go forward, do not think that other developers are not going to come to you and say, you did it for him, now why will you not do that for us? The ordinance says 18.6 acres. That is what he needs to produce. This project has been in the planning phases for over 3 years. Why is it that they did not allocate that amount of land? Right? They knew what the rules were. So asking for these special privileges is is unacceptable, and it would be a compromise of our affordable housing desires to be provided by the city, and it would also undermine our ordinances, and again, set the precedent. The other thing is what about the conditions of this down payment assistance program, which is ridiculous that there is no income requirements, which conflicts also with our ordinances. The idea of the feasibility of the condos, why is that not answered? This has been in progress for 3 years. So I urge the commission to please deny this, because what you will do is you will undermine the city's ability to get affordable housing if this is allowed to go forward. Thank you.
Jim Flanagan, longtime Davis resident and physician. I just want to make a couple of notes that this Village Farms real estate proposal, that the affordable family units will be located in the high density zone. On the other hand, large custom homes will be in the low density zone. Now, a problem arises in that 200 acres of Village Farms is in a floodplain. Lawmakers in Sacramento have weighed in on new developments in risky areas, whether the risk be flood, fire, or whatever. The state has made it clear that cities who allow developments in the floodplain cannot rely on the state funds to bail them out if a flood disaster occurs. Furthermore, 19 days ago, Governor Newsom issued an executive order concerning the Level Pacific Palisades community as it begins its complete rebuild from the ground up. Among other things, the governor declared that the new Pacific Palisades development will now be exempt from SB 9. His reasoning is that high-density units put the inhabitants of a disaster-prone area at increased risk in case an urgent evacuation is needed. Perhaps future residents of Village Farms should enjoy the same benefits as those of Pacific Palisades. For public safety and equity, one might argue that the affordable housing in Village Farms should not be in a high-density cluster, but rather in a low-density area, like the custom homes will be. As the governor notes, this is a safety issue. And referring to a statement in the initial presentation about some 15-minute period where nothing can be reversed, no, certainly Governor Newsom would take argument with that. He'll reverse things for safety issues if needed. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Carol, 36-year resident of Davis. And I just kind of see some pink flags and some red flags regarding the Village Farms. I would like to talk more one-on-one with the developers, but a few of the things that I'm concerned with is that the proposal for the PIP and not that it doesn't meet the city's standards and obligations for affordable housing, and half of the land is missing. Requires 18 acres, and at this point, I think it's being offered 9 acres with the possibility of maybe 18. I feel the community loses millions of PIP and forces the city of Davis to act like a lender. And this is not the city's role, if I understand this correctly. That is, a new staff member would have to administer, and that's already difficult, a new staff member for the city to struggle to cover the basic needs of our city without having to hire a new staff member to act as a bank, for our downtown bike paths and parks. So what I'm asking at this point is for the commissions to kind of put this on hold so we could get a more clear picture. And, if we have to deny it, then go back to the drawing board with the developer because of the pink flags and the red flags that people are talking about. So in any event, I appreciate you listening to me, and thank you.
Thank you. Is there any more public comment? Seeing none. Would we like to take a brief 5-minute bathroom break before we reconvene for discussion?
That's what you can see.
All right, we're coming to the end of our 5 minutes. All right. Thank you, everyone. Before recess is over, before we move on to discussion, I wanted to open the floor for any questions that commissioners might have for the staff.
I can start with one. I think this question is for you, Katie. Is that right, Katie?
Yeah.
In your presentation, when you were referring to the municipal code, I believe I heard you say that we're talking about the PIP and what's required and the expectations and requirements of the PIP. I believe I heard you say that the code doesn't specify that the units have to match the target income groups in the inclusionary zoning. Did I hear you right?
You did. I actually happened to bring up the code because I was concerned that I was going to get a question like this.
Yeah.
So specifically, if I may read it to you,
I have
would that
as well,
be okay?
so go.
So under the project individualized program, the developer may meet the city's affordable housing requirements with a project individualized program that is determined to generate an amount of affordability equal to or greater than the amount that would be generated under the standard affordability requirements. The affordable units at minimum must meet the same income targets specified in the standard ownership housing provision. So let me interpret what that means. The 280 units that, you hear that number rounded up to 280, have to be for half low income and half very low income. Anything else that's provided under the PIP does not have to be for those targeted income groups.
Yeah, okay. I was wondering about the second sentence because I was looking at that as well. Because that doesn't align with that phrase you said, I feel like, because it seems like at a minimum, must meet the same income targets specified in the standard ownership affordable housing, which is 50-50 split between low income and very low income.
That is in reference, so the affordable units, so we have 280 affordable units, and that's where it's an important interpretation. The 280 units that are required under that formula that I showed you must be at 50% low and 50% very low. Any other additional contributions underneath and offered underneath the PIP, as long as that is satisfied, do not need to meet those targeted income groups.
Okay, yep, great, thank you.
Okay, and I have a few questions, but I was also thinking for the benefit, I've been a commissioner for 6 years. This is not our first review, but it is the first review for a number of my new colleagues. Could you please, from the top, very clearly say, what is our exact charge for what we can review? How does it differ from the Planning Commission? Because this is going to the Planning Commission next. We have a duty to meet the charge for our commission. And I do appreciate that you opened, Katie, with saying that you'd like the last point here, provide any feedback to address matters raised, right? And you were pretty open in that. I have a lot of opinions about the whole project, but I know our time is short tonight. Can you please, for the sake of all of us, exactly what we are allowed to weigh in on?
Absolutely. I'm happy to go through that point by point in each of the recommended actions that are in the staff report. So one, you've received my staff report and my presentation. That was the first recommended action. Two, this commission has most commissions are advisory. This commission actually has some decision-making power. So one, a PIP, which I just want to comment on, is that there is a section in the municipal code that says a developer may meet the city's affordable housing requirements with a project individualized program. So I just want to clarify that. So when that is occurring, when a developer is proposing to meet the city's affordable housing requirements with a project individualized program, the commission must find that the project is eligible for a project individualized program. That is the second recommendation from you. You need to make that finding that, you know, there isn't anything peculiar off, that there are generally advantages, that there generally don't appear to be government subsidies that are needed, that there's generally enough innovation with the project, that it meets that. There's a judgment call of this body to determine that it meets that requirement, that it's eligible for that fifth option to meet the affordable housing requirements. That is recommendation number 2. You have to find specifically that for those affordable units, that they are meeting the standard requirements, so that the 280-ish units can be built on the 9 acres that are being dedicated, and staff has included that that is the case based on the zoning. And then further, we are asking that you recommend approval to the Planning Commission and City Council that they approve a PIP substantially in this form as it's written. Because as I said earlier, there are many unknown variables at this point. This is the best that we have. The developer mentioned that there may have been some discrepancies in my staff report versus their understanding. I think it's important that this commission understands we're not finished negotiating this PIP. And let me read you another section of the code so you understand why that's the case. These meetings related to a PIP, now I'm quoting exactly, shall be carried out with any finite contracts in place between the parties involved, allowing for the potential direction to the developer to change the project. If the Social Services Commission finds that the proposed project does not satisfy all of the PIP requirements and the criteria, it may choose to direct the developer to fulfill their affordable housing requirement through the land dedication process. So some of this, in terms of our recommendation as it is substantially written, is because we can't come forward and say, it's finished, here you are. We need to be able to provide an opportunity for you to provide some feedback and to give us some direction if there are certain elements of the PIP that you think need to be modified. But the one that cannot be modified is to say, oh, guess what, you only have to dedicate 4 acres, and 4 acres cannot accommodate 280 units, which is that standard requirement. They must be able to satisfy that standard requirement. So I'll recap, since that was a lot, and I apologize. Find that the project meets the necessary criteria to be able to access that fifth option of a PIP, which is permitted under our municipal code. You can access it if this commission makes that finding. Find that the PIP generates the same amount of affordability equal to or greater than the amount required, that 278.6 units, under the PIP, which we have demonstrated that the land dedication will do that. And then as a process of order, as we move this through the various commissions into the development agreement into front of the Planning Commission, where the Planning Commission actually is the body that would approve the development agreement, we are asking that this commission recommend to the Planning Commission, go ahead and approve this and include this in development agreement. And then if there are aspects or things that you would like us to consider as we're continuing our negotiation, please feel free to provide that in your discussion or feedback to staff. Thank you, Commissioner Ennis.
I have a few more. Okay, all right. Couple other questions. Thank you for that. There is one line in here that mentions surplus land development on page 11, and as a point on the 18 acres. That if we say yes, we want the full 18 acres, it triggers this surplus land development. Can you please explain to us exactly what the impact of that is and how that should inform our decision?
Absolutely, I'm happy to discuss that. So there's a little bit of a hypothetical here, so if you'll indulge me. Assume that we end up in a situation where the developer is being told you need to dedicate the 18.573 acres, which is required by the code. I'm going to just pause until this conversation ceases next to me, since I'm having trouble focusing on what I'm saying. Thank you. It's okay. And I didn't want there to be echoing and picking up so you can't hear what I'm saying. So let's say that we receive those 18.573 acres, and we go and decide, okay, we need to build 280 units. That math does not align with our zoning, and generally speaking, it would not be a building type that may be competitive for other sources of revenue to fill the gap for an affordable housing project, because there are some competitiveness that comes with a dense project. So there's this balance that nonprofit developers are seeking. So they probably wouldn't take the entire 18 acres. So let's say they say take 13. and we're left with 5 acres. 5 acres is absolutely a development site. The city now has a 5-acre asset that they need to decide what they're going to do with. Most likely, and again, hypothetical, most likely, the city would say, okay, we're going to sell that 5-acre asset to do a variety of things, but let's say that in this case, they're going to sell it to support the construction of the 280 units on that 13-acre parcel that we negotiated and settled with the nonprofit developer. We would have to go through something called the Surplus Land Act to dispose of that asset. We would first have to declare that the land is surplus. We would be receiving oversight from the Housing and Community Development Department of the state of California. They have about a 32-page packet of rules that we have to follow whenever we dispose of surplus land. If we are not disposing of that land directly to an affordable housing developer, we do have to go through this process that requires that we reach out to about a couple hundred affordable housing developers, give them an opportunity to put in an offer, and if we cannot execute in good faith negotiations with them, then we can sell the land to a market rate developer with a covenant on the property that requires 15% of the units be inclusionary units, half of them low, half of them very low. That is a lengthy process to go through. That's a 6-month process to go through the Surplus Land Act. Once that covenant is recorded against the property, oftentimes it has a negative impact on the appraised fair market value of the land, because now a developer's like, I can't use it for anything other than residential, and I have to build inclusionary units with this project. And again, on a 5-acre site, it's very possible that you could have a substantial project there, and then some of these provisions, like in lieu fees, ADUs, all of these other things that allow a developer to meet the equivalency of the standard requirement, not through construction, would be removed from that Surplus Land Act disposition parcel. So that has a negative effect. I can't tell you how much of a negative effect, but I can tell you that when you prohibit a developer from having other forms of relief from their inclusionary housing requirements, an appraiser will in fact consider that to have a negative impact on the value of the land. And so then we would be left, and if we couldn't sell that land, we wouldn't have an asset to help support the construction of the affordable housing projects. I'll leave it there and open it up for any questions about what I just said, but I think the point being that it is a time-intensive process for staff. It requires consultation with the state. It will have a negative impact. I can't tell you how much, but it will have a negative impact on the appraisal, and it will create some issues with us disposing of the asset.
Okay, all right, thank you for that, that's helpful. Okay, I have a clarifying question on the concentration of units. Some of our commenters brought this up, and obviously I tallied, I think, 9 different comments tonight about the 18 acres. So I know that this has to be a focus of the discussion tonight based on public input. But one commenter mentioned the concentration of all of the affordable units in the high density zone. Can you clarify that? What is the distribution of affordability across the project? And how much of it is within the land dedication alone?
So it depends on the definition that you're using for affordability. Our developer
I'm using big A.
You're using big A. Okay, so big A, which would be referred to as the inclusionary housing requirements, is being satisfied and consolidated in one 280 unit project. That is the fact. The fact is that the developer is requesting to consolidate all of their low income and very low income inclusionary units into a single project located in the medium high density residential area to the southwest of the project.
I see the lawyer leaning forward in his seat. Are there any additional legal comments on that about distribution of affordable units? Can we invite him to respond to that, or is this a later point? Is there a point where we could have him clarify that?
Well, what I said was factual. It's not open for legal interpretation.
I just saw him talking.
I imagine he has a thought or two he'd like to share, but it is a fact that they are proposing to dedicate 9 acres in a single location, and that single location is where the 280 units are going to be. There may be considerations, but those are the facts.
Thank you. Okay, one more clarifying question, and I know that I'm a pest to my colleagues. Co-op density. I understand that the co-op option, and there's two options on the co-op question. One, so check me, I'm gonna make sure that I understand this. If we go with the co-op, it could be 80 units in the limited equity setup, or 80 units, 82 units, dedicated, permanent, deed restricted, affordable housing. The space for that is within an additional 3 acres. Is that, I want to clarify the point of additional, is that on top of the 9.5? So are we really talking about 12.5? Or is that
12.2.
that 12.2 dedicated?
Total. So what we donate to the city.
Yeah, we're
I'm
going
sorry.
to need you on the record if that was to come, but I think.
And if I could answer that
Yeah,
question
right,
too, thank you.
Katie's supposed to answer.
So the PIP has the developer dedicating 9 to 9.5 to be determined, again, no finite things in place,
Okay.
to the city. They are not dedicating the remaining 3 acres to the city for either the co-op or the moderate income. It's a contribution that they're making in terms of a intended outcome, and if they go with the moderate income deed restricted, there will be a covenant recorded on the property, but the property will never come into the city's treasury. It will never be transferred to the city, that remaining 3-ish acres.
Okay. I'm going to give the floor to my colleagues. I'll say my follow-up questions.
Yeah, just had a quick clarifying question on that 280 we keep talking about. It seems feasible to put 280 on 9 acres. I think everybody is kind of in agreement there. But is that going to be in the DA or the baseline features that it's required? You have to build 280 units. It's not like we can build up to and somebody comes back and says, oh, well, I only decided I wanted to build 150.
So I think it's important to understand, the city is the one that's responsible for the construction of those units under a land dedicated option. So the developer the formula is to determine the acres that they are required to dedicate or an equivalency of those acres required to dedicate. So there isn't like a, I'm sure that we will be discussing the fact that that is the requirement and that is the intent of the land dedication. But I think it's really important to understand that when a developer does a land dedication, that can support the number of inclusionary housing units that they are required to build. This is a substitution. They're not constructing anything. They're giving the land, and then the city, and it's in the code, I can dig it up, the city is responsible for selecting a nonprofit affordable housing developer to construct those units. So again, it's possible that the city could be like, we're doing 256 because that is the most competitive project. It's also possible that the city could be like, we're doing 325 because that is the most competitive project. We are really focused on using this asset and leveraging it for the largest value to the community, and you're entrusting the city with this land dedication approach to do that.
Got it, thank you.
I have a question. So it wasn't mentioned, but is there, I'm just wondering if there's a timeline for when this, like if approved, when might construction start? When might it be completed?
So again, for the purposes of a PIP, the developer is required to build, to deliver a parcel that is, we'll use the term shovel ready. So shovel ready means all the infrastructure is in place, it's stubbed in, the road that gets you from the existing road across the new road to get to this parcel is ready to go. I'm gonna look to my developer, make sure I've got this right.
And I mean
in between phase 2 and 3, correct, is when all that is expected to happen?
I thought it was phase 1 and 2.
So
Phase 1.
we're still, so here's the answer. The reason why we can't tell you for sure is that we're still discussing the performance schedule and the phasing schedule because that's part of the larger development agreement proposal. We are still in talks about like when they will be putting that infrastructure in and dedicating the parcel. That is still being negotiated.
I guess my question is just about the project overall as well, and not just about the.
Okay, so I'll reiterate what I said to the other commissioner is that the construction of the units is something that the city will take on the responsibility for. So once the land has been dedicated in a shovel-ready condition, and the cash contribution has been made, which the development team has assured me will happen earlier in the process versus later in the process, yes, then we will issue a request for proposal for a nonprofit developer. That nonprofit developer will then go out and seek the financing necessary to satisfy the gap in their project. And then if they're successful in their first round, the project gets built. If it takes them 7 rounds, it takes them 7 rounds to do that. Sometimes developers will come, nonprofit developers will come in and say, we've tried 5 rounds, we need more money. We can't fill the gap with the available resources that are out there. We have no information to know how it's going to go.
Okay.
So in bottom line, there's no performance timeline under a land dedication scenario.
Well, not even with the land dedication scenario, but I mean, I guess just for the project overall, even if we agree to whatever terms. Is there a timeline, like, is this something, a project that might happen in 20 years?
So the staff report discusses, and I think it's in table.
I didn't see any like year or anything.
It does
And I'm
have
just
that.
curious, I know that's not exactly relevant to what we're
So,
trying to recommend.
Of course, I would point the chair to table 5, where it talks about the 2 upcoming RHNA cycles, the regional housing needs allocation cycles, where we do have a 15-year absorption schedule that was presented to the Fiscal Commission. And using that absorption schedule, we have shown how we expect this project to contribute at what income levels over the next 2 cycles for the city's anticipated regional housing needs allocation. And so as you can
That's
see,
where it is.
yeah, it is not a small contribution to those. We just don't know what percentage of this it will satisfy because we have not received the total allocation requirements from the Sacramento Area Council of Governments.
Thank you. I have one more question. So in regards to the second recommendation of recommending that the PIP generates the same amount of affordability equal to or greater than that will be generated under the standard requirements, I assume you have run the numbers or staff have run numbers. Is that the analysis that staff has come up with, that indeed it does provide that same level of value?
Yes, so, well, it's not a value question,
Or
it's does it meet the
affordability.
threshold? And yes, you can build according to the land use designation of the land dedication parcel that they are proposing, which is proposed to be designated residential high density. You can accommodate 278.6 units on 9 acres or 9.5 acres.
But I guess my question is, instead of dedicating the 18.57 acres and doing half along with the 2 million and the different programs, does that generate the same value as if the developer were to build those units themselves or dedicate the full 18.5?
So recommendation number 2 is a finding that it's very specific to does the PIP generate the same amount of affordability? And the answer to that is a math answer, which is, can you accommodate 278.6 units on a 9-acre parcel? And the answer is yes, you can. Your question about is it of equal value is not related to recommendation number 2. It is related to recommendations 3 and 4. So the finding is a very specific mathematical finding. Whether you think that it doesn't whether the commission does not think that it equals equal value, you can express that in whatever you decide to do with recommendation number 3 or 4.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So I'm one of the newcomers, so forgive me that I think some of my questions are just clarifications, and I have some, maybe it's my understanding of or the limits of my understanding about how the first-time homebuyer program is going to work, but I have some concerns just about the dynamics of that. And just, I think, Katie, you mentioned in your original presentation that, I think you said that Dana had done, that there was a requirement to do some outreach to a number of stakeholders. I'm just looking to get a little bit more meat on the bone as to which stakeholders and what we were looking to get from them in terms of feedback.
So we sent this out to a number of nonprofits, all of the nonprofits that are on the list of nonprofits in the city of Davis. We also sent it out to a number of affordable housing developers so that they could take a look at it as well. And we sent it to other interested parties. Our email list for the Social Services Commission, we sent that out to that entire list as well so that they knew that this was coming up. And we asked them to provide any feedback or any concerns that they may have.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. On the first attachment number 1, there was toward the, just so people know this is the, toward the end of the page and the bullet there in the second line. It determines, I think someone, someone mentioned in a public comment that there's this sort of feasibility sort of dynamic mentioned a number of times in the documents, and I just wonder, feasibility in terms of what? Financial feasibility? I'm just wondering, you know, I think that's as it was described a number of times by the developers, and I think by some other folks, as a aspect that people are excited about. So I'm wondering what sort of circumstances might cause it to not be there.
So I think you answered your question, your answers in your question, which is always the financial feasibility of something like this. This is a shared equity construct that requires some conventional construction financing, and it is something that would have to be reviewed by a bank, and a bank would have to determine that this is something that they intend to invest in. So whenever we say feasibility, we're going to be primarily, almost on all occasions, referring to can it be funded through conventional bank loans used for construction financing.
Thank you. And then just a little bit lower, I think in that same section, it talks about finding or passing that section over of the property over to a development entity with experience, and then it sort of goes on into that sort of type of property. As I was reading that, I kind of expected the sentence to sort of end in a different way. It sort of talks about kind of how important that experience is, and then I was kind of assuming that the next part, maybe it's just an assumed thing. I just wanted to clarify that if the developer were to do it on their own, sort of in-house or directly, that they would probably, I assume, bring on some sort of outside consultant that had that expertise. It just seemed like it was very important that it was like, oh, well, maybe we'll do it on our own, and it didn't really explain how that was going to be accomplished.
So it is, it's important to understand that when it comes to the co-op and the moderate income rental unit option, that contribution, what the developer is saying is that my proposal was originally just market rate apartments, and I'm now coming in and saying I will do either a co-op, which offers a place for households in Davis to generate some wealth and some income with this unconventional ownership structure, or they will do moderate income deed restricted, which is not it's not the same as market rate. So we're not actually participating in this. I think that's the key. The city is not participating in this option. The developer remains and retains discretion over this option, but they are agreeing that it's either going to be a contribution of a co-op or a contribution of this deed restricted rental instead of just market rate rentals. And so we're here to make sure that if a deed restriction is needed, that we will do that if the co-op option proves to be financially infeasible or impractical or at their sole discretion not desirable. But we don't have a role in other than just ensuring that the housing, that if they go the moderate deed restricted, that housing covenant is recorded.
Thank you. And I should have said at the beginning, I appreciate Sandy, Rochelle, Ethan being here to provide us some of their insights. The next little bit of I have some just concerns about how the first-time homebuyer program is shaped, and just, I appreciated, I believe Sandy, you said that, one of the main sort of aims of the project in general, and particularly this aspect of it, was to bring in new families, and really sort of create more equity in our housing stock, which I think, everybody in this room probably is, shares as a priority, right? But I just feel like the dynamics, again, of this particular aspect of the program, I feel like cuts in a different direction. I think a person mentioned in public comment there not being an income cap, for that support. And I'm just wondering what the reasoning was there. And then, there's this aspect, I think it was mentioned in someone's presentation about, if the value of the property increases, which, is water wet, in terms of Davis housing, right? But if the value of the property increases, then, the city got to get their cut, and I in a normal sort of private sector business environment, that makes a whole lot of sense. We're doing business with each other. One person's a customer, the other entity is the business there. when we're trying to give people a leg up and a little bit of a hand in sort of, going through the housing continuum, doing those sort of normal sort of business practices seems like, again, it cuts in the opposite direction of what we're trying to do. I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry. I'll keep listening, trying to keep track of these, but
No, yeah, go ahead. If you have a response, particularly on why the lack of the income cap.
okay.
So you're not on the record, so if you do recognize them,
I don't know how this all works. I don't usually
The
speak
chair
in these
should.
things. I'm so sorry.
The chair should recognize you standing in order to be at the podium. You should be inviting her to be at the podium.
Please come to the podium.
Thank you. Okay. So the down payment assistance is for first-time home buyers. Yes, it's a little bit above the big A housing continuum. It's specifically, the city wanted us to take off a preference for local teachers and local workforce, but a lot of people who are, young married couple who are two income earners, they're working really hard. They cannot afford to live in Davis and send their kids to Davis school, period. And we need solutions for that. We wanted to do more than 70 of these because we think it's one of the best elements in our program to bring in the people who are just outside that income restriction, or maybe 120. I mean, so the people who are going to qualify for those homes, first off, those homes, there'll be specific homes within the development. We're open to those being townhomes, some kind of product that would be a less expensive product on average, so that 70,000 can go a little bit further. And it's interest rate dependent. So if interest rates come down, people with 120% median income households could potentially take advantage of that. And 70,000 is quite a bit for somebody who maybe has saved up 50 and they need another 70. So this is a lot of money that we are planning on giving towards this. It's not necessarily wasn't our intention that it would be part of the affordable housing requirement. I guess it's being considered as that, but we are meeting the 280. I don't think we were prepared for all of the density objections with the acreage, and if possible, we didn't realize. We thought, because I'm around this stuff all the time, I understand 30 units an acre, I've done projects, I understand also the construction type 5, 3-story walk-up. If you don't do interior corridors, it's basically the same. So it's not going to be much more, but I also would love to share with you a density, a fit study that we did that shows how much open space is on these 12.2 acres. We have it on our computer if we could pass it around. Any more acres, this 15 units an acre is outdated. 20 units an acre is the minimum in our housing element for affordable housing. It requires us to build 20 units minimum. So sorry I went on a tangent there, but I'm glad I get to speak and I would love to share that with you guys.
But just to draw you back to that again, the
Okay.
cap and the sort of reasoning there, you mentioned again the real crisis of people being able to afford to live, the people who grew up in this community who had to, go out, as soon as they became adults and can't afford to live in the community that they grew up in. So again, why, I understand not wanting to attach it to, there's the capital A, sort of reference earlier. I understand not wanting to attach it to those metrics, but why, there was a number of references to the missing middle. I understand that maybe we want to make if we were to do a cap, we want to, give some wiggle room in terms of making it a generous cap, but why no cap?
Well, no cap was partially to keep this a very streamlined program to reduce the administrative costs and objections at the city level. We're modeling it a little bit after, I think it's, there's a program the state of California did that's very similar to this. I don't think that giving someone a interest-free second mortgage, basically, is business as usual. They don't have to pay a dime. They only have to pay this back once they sell their house, and they're paying it with a percentage of their appreciation. So they are able, let's say this ends up being 15% of the house. They get 85% of the appreciation of that house in their pocket when they sell the house. So they're still able to live the dream. It's just that this 15% would go back to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, so more people can take advantage of that. We would be okay with some sort of income deed restriction, if that's really important to you guys, if the city staff does not object to additional administrative costs in that. Just letting you know, we're open to your feedback. I don't know if
Can you repeat that, actually?
we would be open to some sort of cap on the income for those. You could look at that, but you also have to realize it is interest rate dependent on who can afford this. I mean, it can 150%, 140% of median income, the housing price can go all over the place that they can afford. So it adds some complication. We're trying to we were trying to create something just very streamlined, easy to manage, but that would bring in first-time home. They have to be a first-time home buyer. So, you can't have your mansion down the street and come and get this and try to make some extra bucks. So it's just one facet, and I think I answered.
Thank you.
Although I have one more thing I have to tell you. The feasibility that you mentioned, we're donating the money. And it's really the bank is only involved on each individual buyer for each individual house. And so if the person qualifies. If they don't qualify for the loan, they won't be able to buy the house. But we are donating that money. It's coming from us, not a bank.
Thank you. I sense a staff clarification a moment ago. Please.
Is it possible that we can ask the applicant to please return to her seat so we can continue the discussion?
Continue. Darn.
Okay, sorry, Sandy, thank you. Robert's Rules of Order and whatnot. Thank you. So I think I wanted to point out to the commissioner that we are still, as required by the code, leaving some of these things open for discussion. Because again, this commission needs to make findings for a PIP that it meets the eligibility requirements, that it finds that it's meeting those standard requirements, but we can't have everything pre-baked. So some of the clarifications that Ms. Whitcomb brought forward are things that we still have not finished discussing with the developer. And so if you have thoughts, opinions, strategies, suggestions, questions, please feel free to address them to staff, because we will take them into our negotiations with all of our subject matter experts and our subcommittee and attempt to resolve them through the standard negotiations that occur. But ultimately, at the end of the day, some of the questions that you may have will be resolved at the city council level as the city council considers the totality of the development agreement and what is being offered. And so that they may have housing policy objectives related to a down payment assistance program for above moderate income, which is, again, not under the purview of this commission, that we need to consider. They may have feelings about the income caps. In the staff report, I pointed out that there are published income limits that are done through the Cal HFA program. And in the staff report, I listed that it was $269,000 is the household income. So we are going to be working closely with the developer on the implementation side of things. But there are many variables related to the implementation side of things that need to be considered in the totality of the development agreement and are not considered just within the context of the PIP. And so I understand the desire to have those answers to those questions, but it's really important that we sort of say, provide your feedback, tell us if you want this written slightly differently so we can take that forward to the Planning Commission and the City Council, but it will ultimately be resolved through those bodies, negotiations, and through staff's ongoing conversations with the developer, with the support of our subcommittee.
Thank you for that reminder about where we are in the process. I heard something. So as you can hear from my question, I do believe that, just in terms of sharing my feedback about what I hope the eventual product looks like, I do think that it would sort of move better in terms of the aims of the developers and, you know, I think of all of us and making sure that there is more equity within the housing or people who are able to own homes in the community.
Commissioner Harding?
I'm sorry?
Right now, we're kind of taking clarifying questions, and it sounds like you're part of the discussion.
Sure, okay.
Yeah, so why don't we confirm that we've taken care of all the clarifying questions? And then when the commission is ready for discussion, if they'd like to put forward their feedback, we can accept that then.
Sure.
Makes sense?
Thank you, David. Does anyone else have any clarifying questions to staff?
So I'm curious, reading the inclusionary housing ordinance, I guess I'm a little unclear. Does the ordinance require outside of the PIP that the developer satisfy a certain number of units or a certain plot size of land?
So inside the PIP, if you're going to find that a PIP is meeting that second requirement, generates the same amount of affordability, you have to demonstrate that the PIP itself is meeting the same amount of affordability. And we can say that because the 9 acres is part of the PIP, the 9.5 acres is part of the PIP, that you can meet the requirement of 280-ish units on 9 acres. It is compatible with the zoning. And it is a reasonable product type to be constructed for affordable housing.
Yeah, so just kind of going back all the way to the initial recommendation, what we're really being asked for right now is, does the PIP meet what we're talking about, 280-ish unit? I feel like a lot of the commissioners, myself included, have opinions about which element of the affordable housing is good or not good, or could be better, could be improved. But tonight, we really just want to know, we're not recommending you should change this about your thing or this about your thing. It's really just, this meets the minimum standard that we're being kind of pitched to.
We have 4 recommendations. The first 2 are absolutely findings because those are threshold issues. Can the developer actually proceed with the PIP, right? And do they, so those are threshold issues. The second is that the content of the PIP, that's recommendation 4 and 5, we can receive feedback. You can, in fact, I will give you an example of an alternative number 3 if this is where the discussion goes. This is not my recommendation, this is just hypothetical. You could modify recommendation number 3 to say, we recommend approval of the PIP substantially in the form as written with the inclusion of these 5 or 6 comments from this commission to the Planning Commission and City Council. So you can do that if there is something that comes up at the discussion point that you would like to modify that number 3, you are welcome to do that. But the first 2 are just findings as required by the code.
Perfect, thank you.
As a matter of form, do you want us to vote on these all at once? Or can we take some of these motions and findings separately and then amend them with number 3?
My recommendation would be for the first 2 be taken as the findings, they are thresholds, or even as a group. And then if you would like to modify or provide additional comments related to number 4, that be done separately.
Thank you.
No more questions?
I have a clarifying question. It might be just semantics, but you keep referring back to, this number 2 staff recommendation around whether or not the PIP generates the same amount of affordability. And you keep saying that with 9 acres, constructing 280 units is feasible or is doable. Is it fair to say that our feasibility threshold should be not, is it feasible considering, what other projects have been built around the state, but do we feel like the city of Davis is able to construct with the support of a nonprofit, with a $2 million injection to the Housing Trust Fund, able to build these units? Would you agree with that modification or not?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I apologize. I want to be very clear. It is a sort of a mathematical finding. Is that so? I will give you an example of how it would not work, and maybe this will help clarify your question. So, if the developer was proposing to dedicate 9 acres of low density residential, you could not accommodate. It would not generate the number of affordable units required because you could not put 280 units by right. Now, there are density bonuses, and I'm sure Ethan would be happy to discuss how you could actually make it work. But the point is that if they were dedicating, low-density residential land or discontinuous 9 acres of land, you could not make the finding that it would generate the same amount of affordability because you could not practically put 280 units on that. But the land that they are dedicating to propose can in fact result by right in the required number of units, so equal to the required number of units.
So the question is of practicality considering current zoning.
Practicality considering current zoning, what they are proposing to dedicate, which is why the land dedication parcel was included in the exhibit, so you could evaluate the quality and the quantitative value of the land that was being dedicated to meet this threshold requirement of recommendation number 2.
So we should not be evaluating based on the economic feasibility of constructing, the city being able to construct this with partners. We should
That
not
is
be able to.
number 3.
Okay.
So I guess that kind of goes back to what I was asking is, so I totally get that we can build 280 units on 9,000 acres. Does the city have the money to do that or the ability to do that economically? I know we're getting $2 million that will help that perhaps. Is it going to be possible, not just like practically space-wise, but financially or administratively to build that?
I'll let the director first for social service department answer that, and then I'll add anything else that I think is relevant.
I feel as though we're looking at two different things, because what you're asking is, how will the city, if we were to bring this forward, how would the city make this happen?
Yeah.
That will be a part of that part 3 and 4. That would be a question that you would ask staff. It would be a question that you would ask as a part of, okay, we see that these recommendations come in 2 parts. The first 2 things say, is this project eligible for a PIP? That's the baseline, and that's a yes or no. The second question asks, based on what the developer is providing to us, 9 acres, 280 units, based on that, does that meet the PIP requirements? That's a yes or a no. That's the threshold that Katie has been talking about. So those are the baseline questions. It's a yes or no question. Is the project eligible for a PIP? Can the developer propose an alternative? And the second question is, one of this affordability question is, they're proposing 9 acres. Can they build 280 units on it? Yes or no question. Everything else is really kind of qualitative. And you're going to ask those qualitative questions in 3 or 4. So if that's one of the questions that you have about the city's ability to move forward to actually develop something like this, that would be a question that you would pose to staff so that we can include it. After we've met those thresholds, then these are all of the other questions that you have about this particular proposal. Okay. So if you've got questions about staff's ability to move forward with something like that, you would include that in these recommendations so that the Planning Commission and Council know what your thoughts are on what's being proposed. Is that clearer to kind of where you are?
Like you want us only to ask about 1 and 2 right now, and my question comes as feedback for an assessment for point 3 and 4.
Yes. So.
But we're not going to answer that question here.
No, we won't answer those questions here. Those will be you want staff to work more with the developer to help answer those questions. You want us to do more research on that. You want us to get more feedback from the developer as we're doing these negotiations. And you want the Planning Commission and Council to also hear, these are the things that we're thinking about. And we want to make sure that you're addressing those things when this comes back before you.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying.
Okay, may I? Okay, I want to take a temperature check with the group. We've discussed 1 and 2 in quite a lot of detail. Have we wrapped up the portion of the clarifying questions? And if so, are we ready to move on into discussion? Okay, Chair, I leave it to you.
Let's move on to discussion. Does anyone have a discussion point?
Go ahead.
I mean, I think after all the clarifying questions we kind of discussed, and I feel like this 1 and 2 seems pretty straightforward for me, and I think I'm almost ready to put forward a motion just to kind of move on to, I think, what some of the other commissioners are excited to talk about, which is kind of more in that 3 and 4 zone.
I agree with Commissioner Curzon. I want to add, I guess this would be a clarifying question, so forgive me, but the criteria to meet, there are 5 criteria. And we don't have a lot of specificity about what gives us that yes or no met. So in my count, which is moving us into a mix of discussion and clarifying, I have government subsidy not clear, says it's unknown, right? I have sustainability met with some discussion, okay? Community need met, demonstrated by so many different areas of our community conversations around this. Uniqueness, this is the largest project, we have the vernal pools, we can go on. I would say met. Pros and cons, that's very subjective, right? But the overwhelming pro for me is our need for housing of all types, but specifically affordable housing to meet the needs of our community. And I see hands going up, and I'm gonna keep going, but, so my question to you is, for me, it's 4 out of 5 on the criteria, with one of them being unknown. So what is the guidance around how we decide if the criteria has been met?
I'm going to bring up the code, if you'll just give me a second. My computer went down on me.
It said somewhere in the staff report something about if one of them is not met. So the issue for me is the question of us not knowing about number 1, because how can we say it's met if the information isn't there?
So if the social, I'm going to read the municipal code. If the Social Services Commission finds the proposed project does not satisfy one or all of the criteria listed above, it may choose, and this is the key part, it may choose to direct the developer to fulfill their housing obligation, their housing requirement through the land dedication process. This is a judgment call based on what Commissioner Ennis said, because as we pointed out, for the need for government subsidy, there are many unknowable things, and there are many indicators, and those indicators are equal in their weight, and so this commission is not obligated to say, well, that criteria has not been met, so I'm not going to make that finding. They can make a finding that that it's been met because it can't be met any other way than what we've provided. I think that's what the code is allowing for, is the ambiguity of managing what the other section of the code says, which is that we can't have this all sorted out before we come to you. So please know that it says we can't have this all sorted out before we come to you. And then the next sentence is, and if you determine that it hasn't met one of the other criteria. So please keep in mind as you're assessing this, that there is an understanding in this code that you are not being brought a final polished deliverable.
Will the final affordable housing plan be brought to us one more time?
No. If you make those findings this evening, it will not be brought to you unless we make substantial alterations to the project description that affect the affordability amounts.
Okay. Okay, so I feel like that's clarified for me. I'm ready. If someone else wanted to make a motion, if others wanted to discuss further.
One question. I think clarifying question. So forgive me, I lack some background here, but has any other recent developments gone through a PIP process in Davis? And what do those look like?
I'm going to have to invite the community development director up because I've only been with the city since April of 2024. I am not the expert in answering that question, so excuse me.
Thanks for your patience. I think the context that might be helpful is I'm wondering, like, as we were just discussing these criteria, one of the criteria is uniqueness or innovation of the proposed project. With all due respect to the developers, I'm not sure that, it's unique maybe in its size in Davis historical fashion, but it's I don't think that it's a unique development, so curious some perspective from staff.
we've done lots and lots of PIPs. Lots. In fact, I tried to think of a few where we didn't do a PIP. I think it's probably more common that it becomes something on the order, what you're seeing tonight, than the dedication that's spelled out in code.
Have these additional things been added in any sort of other circumstances?
I mean, I looked at the development agreement for, let's see, 6 projects that have been most recently done, and they're all different. So it just depends on what works for that individual project. For example, the Redwoods project, which was approved for up to 560 dwelling units, has a land dedication of about 3 acres for 150 affordable senior apartments. They haven't been built yet, but that's what the city agreed to as their affordability requirement. Things do change over time. I mean, for example, we've had someone ask us about the Dos Pinos project, which is a co-op type of project. When it is 60 dwelling units on 4 acres. That's 15 to the acre. We don't see projects at 15 to the acre anymore. They don't pencil. So things change over time. And I think that one of the things that Katie's been trying to explain is that not only is it the need for the land there, but there's also the need for some monetary contributions as well to get the project built. Because frequently what these affordable housing builders have to do is something called a financial stack.
Capital stack.
Capital stack. And basically what it amounts to, it's like, I get 10 million from you, and 10 million from you, and 10 million from you, and you just pile it all up until you have enough to build it. And that's a new thing. And of course, it just so happens that it's happening right when all the money is drying up. So things change over time. So yes, we've had lots of PIPs.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Let's move on to, can we get a motion to find that the Village Farms Davis development proposal meets the necessary criteria for a PIP as described in the proposal?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oh, wait, we have to discuss that first before we go straight to vote. We're supposed to have a quick vote of discussion.
No.
Yeah. Am I wrong about that? Forgive me.
No, you're correct. So
Okay,
there's a
yeah.
motion on the floor.
There's a
The motion on the floor is that the commission will find that the Village Farms Davis development proposal meets the necessary criteria for a PIP. And there's a motion on the floor by Curzon and seconded by Ennis. And now it's time for discussion.
Okay, time for discussion.
I also want to check, at what point do we have our next round of public comment? We're done. I was saying that we had a gentleman who was interested in public comment, so I wanted to get that clear.
Does anyone want to provide some feedback or discussion?
I'll just say, just to have it on the record, it seems like, I don't know, it seems like the PIP and the combination of, well, the land designation in general, it's strange that there's a very specific requirement for the land designation, but then also to have the ability to use the PIP process to be able to, you know, designate a smaller amount of land. Even with the zoning, with the, you know, necessary zoning to be able to construct affordable housing, it seems like then wouldn't every developer just always use the PIP and never use the land? I just have questions about that. I know we're not talking about that, I just wanted it on the record that, I don't know, that's something that I think we should look into, is what's the, practicality of the land designation and the PIP and the relationship, and if everyone's using the PIP, what's our, what have been the effectiveness of these tools in actually getting units constructed? And so I'd love to see more discussion and analysis on that. Yeah, over.
I would add specifically the algorithm in place for the land dedication based on the 15 units. It sounds like, since that has been an area of significant consternation tonight, that specifically in ordinance review needs another look. So I appreciate what you're saying, Commissioner Rayner.
Okay, are we ready to vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, we have a recommendation. We have finding for item 1. Now, item 2.
For item 2, jumping in, I know the hour is late, okay? So we gotta keep our energy up, we gotta keep the stamina going. For item 2, we don't have an in lieu fee for acreage. And one thing that really jumped out to me when in the presentation tonight is that the 18 acres is the size of the asset. When we refer to something as an asset, that inherently makes us consider its value. I recognize that the way that this is phrased, find that the PIP generates the same amount of affordability. It generates the same amount of units. But when I think about what would be generated under the standard affordability requirements, if we were to factor in the value of the acreage, there's obviously a gap here. And you talked through the bureaucratic differences, the surplus land issue, what it would take to make use of that land appropriately. I spent some time looking at property values. There was one of the emails sent to us did an estimate, and I was curious. And greenfield land out in Dixon could be a couple $100,000, could be more. But if you have half an acre within the city that's empty land, that value is way up. So it is part of our responsibility to consider this. And maybe this goes into number 3. With that being said, I recognize that the way that this is worded and the constraints that we're under, the number of units are equal to. I cannot say that they are greater than, because the other affordability components, as they've laid them out, are not part of big A, capital A affordability. I think that we understand that. I will add to that my frustration as a supporter of co-ops, and I've spoken with many neighbors and friends, community members that have said, co-ops are something we need. I want that kind of community that brings affordability, the kind of affordability that's based on the structure of co-op and the limited equity, the way that it's operated with the shares, etc. There's a reason why these co-ops have wait lists. And it's not just the affordability, it's the lifestyle that they generate. Okay. I'm frustrated that we have to say, do we want those 80 units as a co-op? Or do we want 80 additional permanent deed restricted housing? The only thing that gives me heart there is that they've said if they can't do the co-op, they will do the 80. Okay, so there's a potential that we could reach up to 20% affordability, which is beyond the requirement. So, that being said, we can only talk about the 15. This PIP, in my view, generates the same amount of affordability in terms of units. And I would change this language to say in terms of units, because there are other aspects to affordability and value and assets and what this money means long-term for the city and what it means in terms of how much money can go into the Housing Trust Fund that need careful discussion. So with that, I leave it to you, my colleagues.
You said it so well. I absolutely agree with what you said.
Yeah, likewise. I mean, I'm going to speak for the first time this evening and say I think you sum up, I think, what I've been here sitting with and processing here. So I appreciate you sharing that. Thank you.
Did you want to revise the language as a motion? Is that what you're suggesting?
I would, but I hadn't thought of it. But yes, I do think that we should specify this refers to units as part of our feedback to the Planning Commission so that it's clear. Because I think may, based on what we heard so far tonight, strengthen the comments we provide for 3 and 4. Is that okay?
I wish the city attorney was here because this is language that's very specific about the findings for the municipal code.
Okay.
So I think what we can do is take what you, Commissioner Anna, said as part of number 4 on the overall discussion associated with number 2. But I, without the city attorney here, I would be hesitant to modify the language of the recommendation for a finding. So since we are trying to seek that to make sure that it is consistent with the municipal code, and she did review 1 and 2 to ensure that it was in fact consistent with the municipal code.
I understand that. I think we can make the point another way. That's
Thank
fine.
you very much.
So, colleagues, are we ready to, is anyone ready to make a motion and we can discuss it?
I think I have a clarifying question. If we can, I don't know if we can go back all the way to those. We talked about the zoning on this 9 acres. What is the, do you have any idea of the maximum amount of units that we could build into the current zoning on these?
I'll modify your question. There is no
Sure.
current zoning, so it's proposed
Okay,
zoning.
the proposed
But I
zoning.
will answer your question based on, I'll go with the 9.5 units so that I can
Okay.
tell you. So it would be 380
380.
units.
Okay. I mean, I'll just share one of the things going through my head because we're in discussion, and I think it's good if we're all able to do that and feel comfortable doing that. It still just feels like a number, you know, like we're waving a wand and we're saying, okay, the zoning's there, the land is there, we could just pick a number and then they're gonna get like, and they're, you know, they'll exist. And I know that there's money going down, but my interpretation of the language, and obviously, you know, I'm just citizen and an advocate trying to understand all of this. My understanding would be that, you know, that distinction that we were trying to hash out earlier of, does the zoning allow this versus is it realistic? Can this actually come into existence given the amount of money we have? And yeah, I struggle with that, and so yeah, I don't know if anyone else feels the same, but that's where my head's at.
And I think my understanding is that that's part of number 3, right? I think we're all probably right there with you. I know I am. But I believe that right now, our next step is to make a motion, if we want to do that. If this PIP generates the same amount of affordability, which we are intending to be interpreted or provide the feedback to be interpreted as the same amount of affordable units. Basically, is it possible to build 280 units on 9,000 acres? That's the question for moving forward to make a motion for number 2. And then I think we should absolutely discuss what you're bringing up for number 3, because that's, I think, where we can either recommend the approval or not as of the PIP, because that is the part that says that's the deal, right? So that's my understanding.
I guess it just feels odd to vote on something that it's not actually printed, right? If the words reviewed were affordability, and then we're gonna make our vote on units, I think that's where I feel still unsteady.
I think the important end part there is under the standard affordability requirements, and I think that is very specific to 15%, you know, half very low, half low income. Like under the affordability requirements, it does mention a very specific part of the code that I think kind of clarifies that for me about the affordability versus the affordable number of units. And correct me, staff, if that's incorrect.
I think I start to feel a little like a broken record, I apologize. But the number of units that are required is 280. We have to demonstrate that they can build 280 with 50% at low income and very low income. I don't think staff is attempting to sort of drone on about it to not give credit to the commissioner's discussion, but we do live within the confines of the code. And so this is what the code says. This is what our city attorney has told us this code means. And so that is the finding that we're seeking. And staff has expressed how staff believes that requirement is being met. Happy to answer any other questions, but we are at the point where there is probably no more information that staff can really provide related to sort of the intent or the application of the code language. This is what the code says, and this is what we are asking this commission to consider and take forward. I think we need to make the motion.
Yeah, okay, so I'm gonna ask for a motion to find that the PIP generates the same amount of affordability equal to or greater than the amount that would be generated under the standard affordability requirements.
So I will make that motion.
Thank you. Anyone second?
I can second.
All in favor?
Discussion.
We have to,
Quickly.
okay.
Sorry, I thought we already discussed.
Discussion? Seeing none?
I have nothing to add. We can keep going.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Math.
Aye.
Aye.
And I'm gonna vote nay.
We haven't had that happen, so what is it, does that still pass? It passes,
Yes.
all right. Okay, yeah, thank you for voicing your beliefs. All right, so now we're going to move on to the next topic. And do we want to open this up for questions or clarifying questions about the third point? Or did we already have? No? Okay, so,
I think there's a housekeeping item. You're getting close to 10 o'clock.
yeah,
And I think the commission needs to take a vote to decide if they're going to continue taking up the third and fourth recommendation. Is that correct, Director Bailey?
You have the option to complete this item, and then if they complete this item, then you can vote whether or not you want to move on to
Okay,
item
thank you.
6B.
My apologies. Thank you.
okay. Okay, so I'm going to ask that we have, do people still have questions about item number 3? Do we want to delve into that? I feel like a lot of the questions that have come up have been in regards to number 3, so now I guess is the.
I'm sorry, just to clarify, we're talking about the, under staff recommendation, what's listed under number 4, right? Or, because didn't we just do number 3?
We just did
I
number
think we did 2.
The numbering that's on the presentation is not the
You
same
look
as
at
the
this-
numbering on the
Oh,
staff report.
got it, okay.
Because I did not
Yes, you're right
include,
about the
Okay, got it.
report,
I did
yeah.
not include the first one, which is to receive the report.
Yes, I was looking at the paper agenda in front of me.
Sorry, I'm looking at the screen of the presentation. So are there any clarifying questions about whether we want to recommend the approval of the PIP as it's written? And it sounds like this is where the questions we were having were about.
I have a quick question. Has there been any land dedication sites that have had substantial delays recently where we weren't able to get projects built? I know we have had a lot of recently approved projects in the past 10 years. We've seen a lot of new units go up. Have we had trouble with land dedication sites actually coming online?
Yes, in short answer, yes. In fact, and where it seems to be the largest problem is when the land dedication is going to a nonprofit affordable housing developer directly and not to the city. This has to do with that capital stack that the Director of Community Development was referring to. When the city dedicates the land to a nonprofit developer, it is considered part of a public participation or public contribution. Oftentimes, the city will carry a very long loan, 55-year loan, on that land dedication, and that is considered debt. And so that is considered part of the financing structure. Tax credits, particularly 9% tax credits, view that as part of their competitiveness score, which is what goes into determining if they are going to get their tax credits or not. That is one of the things that we are attempting to course correct as we are moving forward with PIPs and PIPs that have been written for in the past. Sort of are saying, oh, well, the developer will work with this nonprofit housing developer and will dedicate the land directly to them and will have them build it. We're realizing that that doesn't work because what's happening is those nonprofit developers are coming to Director Bailey or myself and they're saying, can we change this land dedication structure? Can we get cash? Can we get a pre-development loan? Can we get the city to participate? Because when the city doesn't participate, we're not competitive for gap financing or tax credit. So we're course correcting so that doesn't happen again.
So the big difference with this one is that the city gets to pick the nonprofit developer through an RFP process, rather than the developer saying, hey, we got this person that we want to do it, and you're kind of pigeonholed where you can't, they can't get that done, the city's kind of stuck. But this process is a little bit different with this.
From the land dedication aspect, that is in fact the difference perhaps from the most recent PIPs that have been approved, is that we are saying it needs to actually come into the city's as a city asset, and then the city will dispose of it. And so that disposition then counts as credit towards the capital stack.
Thank you.
Just the one clarifying question I did have is there was a mention of this might help people's timeline understanding, there was a mention of a goal to have a Measure JR vote. I didn't hear like what year that was. Do we know what? I'm sorry? Oh, we might have a preview of the answer, but is there a cycle that there's the plan for Measure JR?
June 26th. That is what the developer has requested that staff expeditiously work towards, and that's why we're here with perhaps not all of the questions that you have answered, so that we can move towards that schedule.
Thank you. And I do have some comments in terms of the suggestions and feedback when we get to that moment, if we're done with clarifying questions.
If we're done with clarifying, it may make it easier to just go one by one. So everyone can make their comments and we can make sure that we're able to put that into the record.
Okay.
Okay.
So let's move forward with that. Let's go one by one and provide feedback to address the matters raised. So if you have issues about any of the things that are in there, now is your opportunity to make a recommendation for things to be considered when they're negotiating the final bid.
You're the chair, you can set the direction.
All right, we will start on this side.
Thank you. Sort of drawing back to my questions earlier when we were talking about the first-time homebuyer aspect of the support program, I do think, as I mentioned in my questions, that it sort of, the current or the proposed design of it sort of cuts against, I think, some of the intention of, again, producing more equity amongst folks who are able to, who have the privilege of owning a home in this community. I do hope that the end product features some sort of income cap. I think that would help sort of make sure that the children of the wealthiest folks in our community aren't people who are taking advantage of this program. That I think again we're looking to utilize to create more equity in our housing market. There's an aspect of, I think folks who, Commissioner Ennis Brooks, Councilmember Partita know that I've been a longtime supporter of encouraging developers to contribute to the Housing Trust Fund, making sure that we have more support for first-time home buyers. I think that the idea that most people who are supportive of that operate under is that that's developers contributing to the Housing Trust Fund to empower communities like Davis to be able to support expanding affordable housing. And so this idea that we're going to use sort of the repayment income of the owners or possible sellers of these homes in the future to sort of sustain or expand the Housing Trust Fund seems just to be the wrong way to put more money in the piggy bank. I appreciate that as a part of the project, the developer is going to be contributing $2 million to the Housing Trust Fund as just a straight contribution. I think that again, as we're trying to provide a leg up, a helping hand to folks who I think many of which are going to maybe struggle with putting together the change to be able to make these down payments. That again, making sure that there's a cap, making sure that one of the things that we utilize to bring us forward through the housing continuum, the increase in value from the home, is something that those sellers, those owners of those homes can take full advantage of without having to hand over a portion of that to the city. Again, I think if we're, in a normal sort of private sector, business sort of environment where it's customer and sort of business owner, I think that makes sense. But when we're trying to provide a service to lower income prospective homeowners, I think we should operate in different practices. So I hope that that portion, of the increased value is fully within the hands of the owner and the future seller of the home, and they don't have to sort of kick a portion of that to the city. I think that making sure that we are increasing the sort of usable pool of funds here I think that should be done mostly through encouraging developers in these PIPs and different things like that to make contributions as a part of the project here. That would be sort of most of what my concerns and sort of suggestions are, is that we make sure that this first-time home buyer program in particular be one that actually encourages lower income first-time home buyers to be able to have better access to this type of housing. Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate Katie's last comments and talking a little bit about working with some of the nonprofit agencies and how the city, I think, is having to take a little bit, if I understood correctly, a little more of like a responsibility here in supporting that. And I think it gets to the piece of the recommendation that I think I have sat with and kind of in that page 11 and 12 there around, the reduction in the amount of land may make the development of the affordable housing project more challenging, and it potentially leaves us under-resourced in that. And so I think I would want some of the recommendations in that to, of course, be just absolutely dogged and making sure that the city is able to develop or to meet this obligation, especially as there are some of these kind of headwinds with working with some of the nonprofits and whatnot. But I new to this commission, but get the sense that the city staff has that in mind. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I just want to start off, since we're late, I'm going to make this as quick as possible. But I think it is unfortunate that we're having to rush through this. And it makes me nervous because it's a large project and we need to be considering, I think, the priorities of all of the Davis residents, and I'm not sure where the information about the stakeholders and housing came from, but I think, I think there are many of us here who have their finger on the pulse for different stakeholders, and maybe the most important. I would have the council and staff consider negotiating an increase in the contribution, since we're kind of, what we did here was more of a formality. So hopefully in our recommendations, we can I think the city deserves, if that's the exchange, then that $2 million should be increased. We should encourage, and then I do agree with the other commissioners about the feasibility of making an income cutoff for the 70,000, 4.9 million. Anyway, we've already discussed it. So yeah, I just think it's unfortunate that we're having to make this decision the way we have to. And so that's all.
Yeah, I guess my number one concern is I'm not sure how effective the down payment assistance program is in terms of scope and impact. 70 families is a lot, but in the scope of how many people live in Davis and how much our schools need and for students, I don't think that makes a substantial impact, where I think that 4.9 million could make a much bigger impact in other areas of affordable housing. I know there's talk about turnover, that money comes back. These first-time homeowners probably aren't going to be second-time homeowners anytime soon because they're not going to get a down payment assistant to help them out move into a new house. So I think these 70 people that live there are going to live there for a long time, which I think is great, but that money kind of just disappears, and 70 people I don't think is a huge impact when we talk about $4.9 million. I think we should be able to help a lot more than 70 families. So I would consider negotiations potentially being open. Even if that 4.9 went to the trust fund, the city could do a lot of work with that. That could potentially help with getting that affordable housing build. I think the city and the negotiation should just be open to considering other options when they are in conversations with the developer.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Yeah, I have a lot to echo here. I think I'm very concerned about the down payment assistance program, about the long-term feasibility of administering it, and about the equity concerns. So I think I would definitely advocate for either some sort of income cap, which I don't love that option, but you know, I think that the best option would be to allocate that down payment assistance cash somewhere else into more permanent affordable housing. Yeah, I think that's all I have right now.
Thank you. Agreeing with what everyone said, and I just want to call out how I do appreciate how this project has so much open, like it has 47 acres of habitat, 40.8 acres of greenbelt, 28 acres of community park, almost 7 acres of neighborhood park. Like that is really cool in terms of quality of life. I really like that aspect of it. That's not really our goal here as the Social Services Commission, but I do want to just note that I do like how that is designed. And I agree that, you know, I would like to see the numbers and the calculations of how much will it cost to build those affordable units on that land. I know that we haven't gotten to that part yet, and there's a lot of questions about it, but I think that being able to approve of the PIP as is would have to be dependent on if that $2 million is essentially enough to enable the city to build, to be able to, you know, eventually build these affordable houses on that. That's my 2 cents.
By my count, we have 6 commissioners that are interested in an income cap, starting with what Commissioner Hart kicked us off with. I want to remind everybody that 15% is the floor, right? And these other affordability pieces, while they are really, really positive, they're not going to give us permanent deed restriction. So with that in mind, and based on the fact that we have to ask for more, having them go above the 15% requirement, I think is unlikely. But they did offer that the co-op could be an additional 80 and bump it to 20%. I'm truly of 2 minds on that, but I want the Planning Commission to wrestle with that. The trade-offs between the 2 options and the feasibility of the 2, because if we can get up to 20% built, that's good. If we also get, or rather than that additional 20%, a different kind of affordable community, that is also a good thing, but we need to know the pros and cons of the models. Everyone already shared the comments about DPA. My top priority within this conversation, if we can't get up higher above that 15%, is to increase the number on that 2 million to ensure that we can in fact get these units built. That's a big concern to me, especially with, I know that you put in the, there's been this change of fail-safe where we have an RFP process instead of the public-private partnership combination. And that's good, but we still need that money to be higher. Connecting back to what I said earlier about how we don't have it in lieu fee for acreage, all the more reason why the Planning Commission, and it sounds like the Social Services Commission, needs to ask for a negotiation for more going into the Housing Trust Fund. One comment that I heard tonight was that the dollars that go into the Housing Trust Fund would be used from this project in the down payment assistance. I want a portion of that money to be unrestricted use in the Housing Trust Fund because we have units and needs and across the city. If the money goes into the Housing Trust Fund and we have the deliberations by council and by social service commissions in the future to determine the use of that fund, that's an asset to the city in the long term. The more that we can increase that money up front and not through this slow drip over time, the better off we will be to meet the needs of our community, which are not just right now, but they were here yesterday, they were here 5 years ago, they were here 10 years ago. We need that money at a higher number today. With that, I was done.
Yeah, just a couple comments. Yeah, I'm a really big fan of the limited equity cooperative idea and model. I mean, looking into it, yeah, it seems like it's a well proven. Lots of cases in New York. Well, this is where this has really reduced people's housing burden for a long period of time, and also provides people with stability in their housing. They're not subject to a landlord. they can make their own decision about when they leave. And it also seems to just really have, lower rates of monthly payments compared with market rentals. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of that, and I think, very supportive of pushing for that and including for that within this package and this development. On down payment assistance, I'm also skeptical, like some of our other commissioners here. I'm kind of just skeptical in the numbers in general with $70,000, like, the calculation that was in the staff report was calculating around a $680,000 starter home, especially considering that all of this still has to be constructed, if that's